Chapter 1687. Seeing Xiao Hua and Qian Diheng giving way to each other, Kun Fian also felt a little warm in his heart. He advised, "Since it's an opportunity, where else can it be? Let's wait until we get there." "Hi, you're right." Qian Diheng slapped his head and said, "If we could get it earlier, I'm afraid we wouldn't have a share." "Ha!" Xiao Hua laughed heartily again. His figure accelerated and flew towards the west. He said, "Since we are looking for fate, this little brother's luck has always been good. Let me take senior sister and senior brother on a trip to the west." "Wait, wait, wait." Seeing this, Sun Shu called out "wait" 3 times. But Xiao Hua was already far away, leaving the 3 behind and shaking their heads with a bitter smile. When Sun Shu and the other 2 caught up with Xiao Hua, they said, "Junior brother Xiao, you're going in the wrong direction." "What's wrong? Don't you want to hide your tracks? Where are we going?" Xiao Hua scratched his head. "Junior brother Xiao, 2,000 miles to the north is Weeping Moon City. It's the place we want to go." Sun Shu laughed. "Strange, didn't you just say you want to hide your tracks? Won't we be exposed when we get to Weeping Moon City?" Xiao Hua knew there must be a reason. "It's a diversion." "Junior brother Xiao, how could you forget?" Qian Diheng shook his finger in the air and said, "Besides, we still have a lot of things in our storage bags. If we don't go to Weeping Moon City to exchange, wouldn't it be a waste of our trip?" "I understand." Xiao Hua nodded. Then, Xiao Hua followed the 3 to the north. After flying for a while, Qian Diheng looked at Kun Fian and Sun Shu who were leading the way and whispered to Xiao Hua, "Junior brother Xiao, have you been to Weeping Moon City?" Xiao Hua's eyes turned, wondering why Qian Diheng whispered to him. He also whispered back, "My cultivation was low before, so I've only been to Jianghu City and Yenyuan City. Oh, Qianyu City was also considered a passerby, but I've never been to Weeping Moon City." "Well, since junior brother Xiao has never been to Weeping Moon City, then naturally you don't know the benefits of Weeping Moon City." "Oh? Senior brother Qian, please give me some pointers." Qian Diheng nodded. "Senior sister Sun was the one who decided on the route we took along this journey, but Weeping Moon City was my suggestion. It's only because I know the location of an artifact refinement facility in Chiyu City. This place doesn't care about the origin of your magic tool. As long as you can afford the spirit stones, you can change the appearance of your magic tool or even upgrade its grade. There's such a place." Xiao Hua was overjoyed. He had read the ancient records for 5 years and knew of the 10 great cities and the 10 great danger zones. However, he had never seen these relatively secretive places. I see that the martial uncle of Swallow Thunder Ridge is making things difficult for you. I'm afraid he's not making things up. Presumably, your myriad Thunder Valley has some matters that you can't handle in Swallow Thunder Ridge, so I have some matters to attend to in this place. If you need anything, you can come with me." Qian Diheng said with a faint smile, "That place is very mysterious. It is said that even magic treasures can be refined again. If you want to change the appearance of your magic treasure cloud suppressing seal, it is naturally possible. Of course, the prerequisite is that you have enough spirit stones." At this point, Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. "I'm afraid the spirit stones needed to refine magic treasures are a lot. Little brother, even if I take all of your spirit stones, it won't be enough, right?" "Of course you don't have spirit stones. You can also use other magic tools to exchange for them," Qian Diheng explained. "In addition, some medicinal pills are also fine." "Didn't junior brother Xiao get some medicinal pills at the Feather Immortal Assembly? If you take them all out, it should be enough. Then forget it." Xiao Hua shook his head. "I'm still waiting to use those medicinal pills after I build my foundation." Kun Fian seemed to have sensed something and turned around to look at the 2. Qian Diheng immediately shut up and smiled at Kun Fian. Kun Fian didn't see anything and continued to fly forward. Qian Diheng winked at Xiao Hua and didn't say anything else. They didn't say anything along the way. After flying for a few days, Xiao Hua saw that in the distance, there were hundreds of huge rocks arranged in a strange way on the ground. Xiao Hua sighed in his heart. "Weeping Moon City is actually like this." Sure enough, Qian Diheng pointed with his finger and said, Junior brother Xiao, that place in the distance is Weeping Moon City. This Weeping Moon City is different from other cities. It is made of huge rocks. Look, those hundreds of huge rocks are the city walls of Weeping Moon City and also the Great Defensive Formation of Weeping Moon City. It is said that the Great Defensive Formation of Weeping Moon City is divided into two layers. The inner layer is the huge rocks, called the 100-change huge rock formation. When it is not activated, these hundreds of huge rocks protect the entire Weeping Moon City. It is purely for defense. But once it is activated, those hundreds of huge rocks will leave their original positions and float in the air. They can both attack and defend. The most powerful one is the second layer of formation, called the 10,000 Stacking Waves Formation. It is said that when it is activated, the tens of thousands of rocks within dozens of miles of Weeping Moon City will be controlled by the formation. From top to bottom, from front to back, it will protect Weeping Moon City. It is like a rolling ball of huge rocks. Unless there is a powerful person or a cultivation sect attacking, it will be impossible to break through. Oh my, it is so powerful. Xiao Hua stuck out his tongue. The power of Weeping Moon City was recorded in the ancient books of Imperial Thunder Sect. Xiao Hua didn't say anything and only expressed his amazement. Yes, the ancestor of Weeping Moon City is a master of formations. It is because of the abundant spiritual energy of heaven and earth in Weeping Moon City that he built this city from the rocks. This kind of powerful person is really worthy of my respect. As Sun Shu and the others spoke, the four of them had already flown to the front of Weeping Moon City. I am afraid that flying is going to be forbidden, Xiao Hua thought to himself when he saw that they were still a few miles away from Weeping Moon City. Sure enough, as Xiao Hua's body tightened, a great force pulled Xiao Hua to the ground. Sun Shu said in a low voice, "Junior brother Xiao, let us land. In front of us is the forbidden area of Weeping Moon City." And Xiao Hua nodded. Everyone landed. Weeping Moon City didn't seem to be as lively as Jianghu City. As far as the eye could see, there were only 2 or 3 cultivators landing from all directions and entering Weeping Moon City. Moreover, unlike Jianghu City, Weeping Moon City didn't have any city gates. There were gaps between the huge rocks in front of them. Xiao Hua and the other cultivators in front of them were free to enter from different places without any obstruction. Even the situation inside the huge rocks wasn't blocked. Everything could be seen at a glance. The city lord of Weeping Moon City is said to be a nascent soul female cultivator named Fairy Weeping Moon. She is a master of formations. The way she opens the door to welcome guests is really impressive. I wonder when I will have the opportunity to pay her a visit. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes as he looked at the huge rock formation of Weeping Moon City. He couldn't help but think of his rabbit talisman and the formations he had comprehended. Chapter 1688. Of course, Xiao Hua was the only one who knew what he was thinking. He knew that he was dreaming. Fairy Qiue was a nascent soul stage senior and the lord of a city. How could she possibly communicate with a mere qi refining stage cultivator? It would be impossible for them to even meet once. Immediately, Xiao Hua followed Sun Shu and the other 2 and picked a place to enter Qiue City. However, when Xiao Hua reached the gap between the boulders, there seemed to be no obstruction at all. Even his divine sense couldn't detect any obstruction. However, a very subtle thing swept past Xiao Hua's body. This feeling was also the result of Xiao Hua's Buddhist sense. Only his Buddhist sense could detect a trace of it. Moreover, Xiao Hua's eyes turned a few times and he hid this strange feeling in the bottom of his heart. When he walked through the gap between the boulders and entered Qiue City, Xiao Hua was still dumbfounded. It turned out that what the naked eye saw was far from the truth. The bustling and prosperous scene inside Qiue City was completely different from what Xiao Hua had seen outside the city. The figures and traces of the cultivators who had entered the city earlier were all illusions created by the formation. The real figures had long since disappeared. AI, it really is a great formation protecting the city. It's far from what I can guess with my current cultivation. Xiao Hua secretly smiled and shook his head. Qiue City was different from Jianghu City and Yenyuan City. All kinds of buildings were piled up with huge boulders and had a rough style. Even the streets inside the city were more than twice as wide as the other two cities. The shops on both sides of the street were equally wide. However, what was similar was the signboards of the shops and the smiling low-level cultivators standing in front of the shops. Two spirit beasts that were several times larger than camels were carrying an incomparably large flower carriage. The flower carriage was suspended in the air and was pulled by the spirit beasts. They quickly flew past Xiaohua and the others and quickly rushed to the end of the street. Xiaohua knew that these spirit beasts were the specialty of Chiyue City, spirit camels. They were powerful, fast, and most importantly, gentle. They were used to pull carriages and were quite similar to the flying feather beasts of Yenyuan City. While he was thinking, an empty car slowly came from afar. Qian Diheng took a step forward, stretched out his hand and called, "Buddy." There was a fourth-layer qi refining cultivator sitting on top of the spirit camel pulling the carriage. When he saw someone blocking the carriage, he patted the protruding hump on the back of the spirit camel. The spirit camel raised its head and neighed before galloping towards Qian Diheng. "Let's go, junior brother Xiao. It's forbidden to fly in Chiyue City. It's a bit far for us to walk to the inn. Let's take the spirit camel carriage. After we get on the carriage, I'll tell you more." Qian Diheng turned around and explained to Xiaohua with a smile. However, before he could finish his words, a cultivator walked out of a shop about 3 meters to the left of Qian Diheng. When that cultivator saw the spirit camel carriage in front of him, he stepped on it without even looking at it. "Fellow Taoist, this carriage was called by the fellow Taoist in front. Please get off and wait for the next carriage." The cultivator driving the carriage didn't dare to drive the spirit camel. He looked at Qian Diheng and turned around to say to the cultivator who got on the carriage. Just as the cultivator spoke, another 6 or 7 cultivators walked out of the shop. They were all 10th-layer qi refining cultivators. When these cultivators saw the cultivator in front of them get on the carriage, they all laughed and wanted to go up. Qian Diheng had already noticed this. His expression was very ugly. He coldly walked to the front of the spirit camel carriage and scolded, "This is the spirit camel carriage I called. How can you be the first to get on it? Hurry up and get off." This group of cultivators was stunned. The cultivators who didn't get on the carriage didn't matter. However, if the cultivators who got on the carriage got off, they would lose face. However, when they saw Qian Diheng's late 12th-layer qi refining cultivation and the 3 people behind him, they couldn't help but hesitate. "What? You still don't want to get off?" Qian Diheng's sneer became even wider. "Humph, I got on the carriage first. I didn't see anyone calling for a carriage. Although your cultivation is high, you can't be unreasonable." When the cultivator who got on the carriage saw that there were people watching, he unconsciously became emboldened and stood up to shout. Then he said to the cultivator driving the spirit camel, "I often walk around Chiyue City. I have sat in this fellow Taoist's spirit camel carriage before. Tell me, who got on your carriage first?" Just as the owner of the spirit camel was hesitating, another cultivator walked out of the shop with joy on his face. This cultivator was holding something in his hand. When he saw the many cultivators in front of the spirit camel, he frowned. He looked around and saw Xiaohua and the others. However, at that moment, his eyes were filled with shock. Then a hint of ecstasy appeared on his face. He turned around and returned to the shop once more. However, Xiaohua and the others were looking at Qian Diheng and the cultivators on the spirit camel carriage with great interest. They didn't see the cultivator who came out of the shop at all. Fellow Taoist came first. Obviously, the owner of the spirit camel was intimidated by the cultivator. He cupped his hands and said to Qian Diheng with panic on his face, "Senior, I was dazzled and thought you were going to get on the carriage. Since you didn't, please look at the other carriages." With that, an empty spirit camel carriage came slowly from not far away. The cultivator driving the carriage was overjoyed. He quickly stood up from the spirit camel carriage and waved his arms while shouting. Unfortunately, what kind of temper did Qian Diheng have? As a disciple with a powerful background in the Heavenly Thunder Palace, how could he give in so easily? What? A disciple of my Thunder Control sect was bullied by a 10th-level qi refining cultivator in Chiyue City? Damn it, I'd like to see which famous sect dares to rob a disciple of my thunder control sect. Qian Diheng reached out his hand and grabbed the spirit camel carriage's nose and said angrily without looking at the empty carriage. Thunder control sect? The cultivator driving the carriage turned pale. He quickly turned his head and bowed, saying, "Senior brother, can you go to the carriage in front?" Boy. Thunder control sect. A trace of fear appeared on the faces of those cultivators. They unconsciously looked at each other in dismay. You're really a coward. How come you retreat when you see a famous sect? You've become unreasonable even though you were reasonable. That's right. If it's I'll definitely not get off the carriage. Magic is forbidden in Chiyu City. So what if you're a disciple of the Thunder Control sect? You have to be reasonable. It seemed that many cultivators had a lot of opinions about the famous sections. At this time, seeing the situation, they also added fuel to the fire. Humph, fellow brothers, others care about the Thunder Control sect. Why should we care about them? Come on, I'd like to see what the city guards of Chiyu City do. The cultivator who had already got on the carriage sneered and called out. The cultivator driving the carriage turned even paler. He had to turn his head and beg Qian Diheng again, "Senior brother of the Thunder Control sect, no, martial uncle, please turn around. That spirit camel carriage is fast and stable." A bunch of cowards. Qian Diheng was angry. He used his strength to pull his hand. The spirit camel was pulled by him. It seemed to be in great pain. It tried its best to support itself and raised its hoof to lift Qian Diheng. The spirit camel fruit was indeed a spirit beast with great strength. Qian Diheng's hand shook and the spirit camel fruit broke free. Damn it! Qian Diheng was angry. His face was slightly red. He slapped his hand and was about to take out a magic tool from his storage bag. Sun Shu was shocked. He quickly stepped forward and held Qian Diheng's arm. He transmitted his voice, "Junior brother Qian, don't be angry." The other cultivators saw this and knew that Qian Diheng would not do anything. They laughed and began to board the carriage. The last cultivator glanced around and looked at the shop behind him with a strange expression. Is that so? I heard that Chiyu City does not allow the use of magic power to fight?" Xiaohua smiled and stepped forward. He quickly grabbed the spirit camel fruit's hoof. The spirit camel fruit was obviously scared. It quickly pulled back. But in Xiaohua's hand, how could it struggle? Soon after, Xiaohua effortlessly grabbed the spirit camel's hoof and exerted a bit of force. The spirit camel screamed and lost its balance and fell to the ground. The owner of the spirit camel immediately jumped off the spirit camel's back. The carriage on the spirit camel's back was also tilted. Other than the first cultivator who forced himself to remain standing, the others also jumped off the spirit camel. The spirit camel fruit first lay down and then struggled to get up. Xiaohua stepped forward and pressed one hand on the spirit camel fruit's back. He sneered, "I want to see if this spirit camel fruit, can it still carry people?" Seeing this, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. The spirit camel was a common thing in Weeping Moon City, and everyone knew how strong it was. Xiaohua was able to subdue it with a single hand, so how strong was he? Of course, strength was secondary to cultivators. However, when magic power was not allowed to fight, strength was obviously superior. Where is senior brother Chang? Why hasn't he come out yet? The last cultivator looked around and shouted, "Senior brother Chang?" The others were also shocked. They exchanged glances and shouted to the cultivator who was still on the spirit camel fruit, "Senior brother Tsong, senior brother Chang is still in the store. Is something wrong? Let's go in and take a look." Fine. Senior martial brother Tsong glared hatefully at Xiaohua and the others and said, "Weeping Moon City is a place of reason. If it weren't for my senior martial brother, this poor Taoist would never let this matter rest." After that, he jumped down from the spirit camel fruit and followed the others into the store. "I want to see who is the one who won't let this matter rest." Qian Diheng clapped his hands and was about to follow the others in. "Forget it." Sun Shu quickly stopped Qian Diheng. "Don't lower yourself to the same level as these lowly cultivators. It will tarnish the reputation of our Imperial Thunder sect." Qian Diheng stomped his feet and was about to get on the spirit camel fruit. Why are you getting on this? Xiaohua loosened his grip and let go of the spirit camel fruit. He pointed and said with a smile, "Why don't you take the spirit camel fruit over there?" "Ah, that's right." Qian Diheng glanced at the cultivator who was standing next to the spirit camel fruit with a pitiful look. He laughed and got on the other spirit camel fruit. A pitiful person must have something to hate. Kun Fian concluded and got on the other spirit camel fruit as well. Chapter 1689. The spirit camel carriage was very fast, and the Weeping Moon City was very big. Obviously, Qian Diheng already had a plan. After getting on the spirit camel carriage, he told the cultivator driving the carriage the name of an inn. Sun Shu blinked and didn't refute. The spirit camel carriage walked for an hour before arriving in front of a luxurious-looking inn. Qian Diheng took out spirit stones to pay the bill. Xiaohua glanced at it and couldn't help but feel a little heartache. He didn't expect that riding the spirit camel carriage would actually cost so many spirit stones, but thinking about the half-hour journey, it would really be a headache. This heartache and this headache, it seemed that he had to choose the same. As for the accommodation, Qian Diheng was also generous. He asked for 4 rooms, 1 for each person. After waiting for the waiter to eagerly send the 4 people to their rooms, Xiaohua took the magic tablet, looked at it casually, and threw it on the table in the room. He then sat cross-legged on the cloud bed, quietly waiting for Qian Diheng to come. Unexpectedly, after a long time, he still didn't see Qian Diheng's figure. Xiaohua couldn't help but feel surprised. Could it be that senior martial brother Qian's personality has changed? At this time, footsteps came from outside the room, and Sun Shu's voice came. "Junior martial brother Xiao, can I go in?" Xiaohua jumped up from the cloud bed and said with a smile, "Senior martial sister Sun, please come in. The restriction of eyes room is not open." Sun Shu entered the room, looked around, and said apologetically, "I originally wanted to book another inn in the Weeping Moon City, but I didn't expect junior martial brother Qian to insist on coming here. The conditions here are a little bad. I hope junior martial brother Xiao doesn't mind." Xiaohua knew that Sun Shu came with a purpose, so he said with a smile, "I'm just a loose cultivator, and I'm already very satisfied with these conditions. Senior martial sister Sun, what brings you here?" Sun Shu nodded, looked around, and said with a sound transmission, "Although we came to the Weeping Moon City to deceive people, we still have to go to the Weeping Moon City's price negotiation. What I didn't tell you in detail before is that the Weeping Moon City's bargaining conference is quite unique. Many mystic instruments and even mystic treasures of unknown origin are brought here to be exchanged. Junior brother Qian must have chosen this place for the purpose of the bargaining conference. I have already made some inquiries, and it just so happens that there will be a price negotiation meeting in 3 days. If junior brother Xiao is interested, shall we go together?" Hearing this, Xiaohua's face lit up with joy. He clapped his hands and said, "Good, this little brother hasn't come out to travel for a long time. I'm just looking for some good things to bring back." Then it's settled. Junior brother Xiao can cultivate here for the next few days, or you can go out and enjoy the scenery. In 3 days I will come and get junior brother. Xiaohua nodded and said, "Senior apprentice sister Sun arranged it very well. Little brother has no objections. Little brother is meditating in the room. When the time comes, I will wait for senior sister's call." Sun Shu covered his mouth and laughed. Junior brother Xiao is quite peaceful. I don't have to worry about him. There seemed to be a hidden meaning behind these words, and Xiaohua's face turned red. However, after Sun Shu took a few steps, he turned back and said, "Oh right, there is a special spirit herb in Sobbing Moon City that is used by Foundation establishment cultivators. Junior brother Xiao, if you have the time to go out and try your luck, you might be able to find something." Senior Sun is talking about the Ilian green fruit, right? Xiaohua said with a smile. Junior brother Xiao is quite knowledgeable. The climate near Sobbing Moon City is dry and the Earth's spiritual energy is dense. It's a good opportunity for the Ilian green fruit to grow. Many cultivators come to Sobbing Moon City for this special spirit fruit. Sun Shu said with a strange expression. After all, When Xiaohua first went to the Feather Immortal assembly with her, he didn't seem to know a lot of things. She was just reminding him out of kindness. She didn't expect Xiaohua to read a lot of ancient books in these 5 years. Although he didn't travel, he still understood a lot. Xiaohua scratched his head and didn't explain. He shook his head slightly. This Lien green fruit is good, but it's used to improve the structure of true essence. It's used for early-stage foundation establishment cultivators to break through. It doesn't seem to have any effect on aura-refining cultivators like us, right? Speaking up to here, Xiaohua's heart was slightly moved. His cultivation was constantly improving, different from other 12th-layer aura-refining cultivators whose cultivation was stagnant. Would this Lien green fruit be useful to him? I just feel that although junior brother Xiao failed to build his foundation, with junior brother Zhao's aptitude, you can definitely build your foundation in the future. Didn't the ancients say? When the heavens are about to bestow a great responsibility on a great man, they must first torment his will, tire his muscles and bones, starve his body, empty his body, and disturb his actions, right? Junior brother Xiao only needs to be patient and you can achieve what you can't. Foundation establishment, gold core, you can just raise your hand. Sun Shu stared at Xiaohua with her beautiful eyes and said very sincerely. When Xiaohua heard this, he also raised his head and looked at Sun Shu's gaze. He saw that her pure gaze was full of trust and didn't have the slightest trace of contempt. Xiaohua said with a smile, "Thank you, senior sister Sun. Junior brother definitely won't disappoint senior sister. Junior brother Xiao, go ahead and cultivate. I'm leaving." Sun Shu's face inexplicably reddened. Her words were admittedly filled with trust in Xiaohua, but they also contained encouragement. Seeing Xiaohua's unparalleled self-confidence, who knew how many times stronger than the decadence of many cultivators who failed to build their foundation, her heart couldn't help but become slightly chaotic. After Sun Shu left, Xiaohua sat on the cloud bed for a while, but he still didn't see Qian Diheng coming over. He couldn't help but feel anxious. In his storage pouch, he still had the 4-phase wheel, 100-layer cloud seal, MO cloud armor, and a spear-shaped magic tool. That magic tool and 4-phase wheel weren't as offensive as the cloud-suppressing seal, but the 100-layer cloud seal and MO cloud armor were defensive magic tools. In the cultivation world, defensive magic tools were much rarer than offensive magic tools. It was rare that Swallow Thunder Ridge, which was an inheritance of refining, could suddenly take out 2 defensive magic tools to deal with Xiaohua's cloud-suppressing seal. Xiaohua didn't know that he could reforge magic tools in Weeping Moon City, but since he knew, how could he not have thoughts about it? After all, although Xiaohua's current physical body was tough, it couldn't be compared to magic tools. Without a protective magic tool, wouldn't it be the same as not wearing a Taoist robe? However, when Xiaohua arrived at Qian Diheng's room, Qian Diheng removed the restriction. After hearing Xiaohua's request, Qian Diheng unconsciously smiled mysteriously and said, "Junior brother Xiao, don't be anxious about this matter. We can't go anywhere at the same time. Anyway, there are still 3 days before the price negotiation. Let me explore the path first and figure out the twists and turns, then I'll tell junior brother Xiao. What do you think?" Junior brother understands. Xiaohua nodded emotionally. He was also worried about how to take out magic tools in front of Qian Diheng. This arrangement was exactly what he wanted. Soon after, Xiaohua returned to his room. Looking at the furnishings in the room, he knew that this place wasn't suitable for him to cultivate. Frowning, he took out the jade slip for refining tools and carefully studied it. After a long time, Xiaohua didn't carefully calculate the time. He didn't know which part of the refining tool he saw, but Xiaohua's heart was moved. He floated up from the cloud bed, took out a magic tablet, opened the restriction in the room, and walked out of the inn. "Sir, where are you going?" Seeing Xiaohua come out of the high-priced room, the waiter waiting outside quickly came to greet him. Looking at the waiter's flattering face, Xiaohua sighed in his heart. This waiter's cultivation base was at the 2nd layer of the Qi refining realm. Several years ago, when he was in the Shang Huaming and Heaven Forsaken, he had always been pursuing the realm. But now, this 2nd layer of the Qi refining realm wasn't even worthy of carrying his shoes. He could only be servile in front of him. The realm and cultivation that cultivators pursue are not without reason. Master's encouragement and supervision are also not wrong. Thinking of this, Xiaohua recalled Wu Hen's encounter on Sky Thunder Peak. If it wasn't for him being worried, how could Wu Hen run from Myriad Thunder Valley to Sky Thunder Peak? Unfortunately, I'm a good-for-nothing disciple. I'll have to disappoint Master for a few years. Xiaohua's gaze was somewhat erratic. Sir? Seeing that Xiaohua didn't answer, the waiter didn't dare to say anything else. He called out in a low voice and retreated to the side. Xiaohua glanced at him and felt a trace of pity in his heart. It was as if he was looking at himself from several years ago. He patted his hand and took out a mid-grade spirit stone from his storage pouch. He handed it over and said with a smile, "Waiter, I want to see a tool refining shop. Are there any good shops you recommend?" There's no need for a spirit stone. The waiter didn't expect Xiaohua to give him a spirit stone. He quickly declined and said with an apologetic smile, "There's a shop in the east of the city called Luanji. It's a famous old shop in Chiyue City. The shop's owner has 1,000 years of inheritance and is the most authentic. If Sir Daoist goes there, you can mention my name and it'll be 10% cheaper." Waiter, you sure know how to fool people. Who doesn't know that there's a shop in Chiyue City? That shop is also close to here. You want this fellow Taoist to go to Luanji's shop? I'm afraid you have some selfish motives. A cultivator with a ruddy complexion just happened to walk out of the room. When he heard the waiter's words, he sneered. "I'll let this Taoist know." The waiter's face immediately turned red and he quickly said, "I do know the owner of Luanji's shop, but his things are really good. Although Chiyue sect is close, their things are more than 30% more expensive than Luanji's. Everyone wants to go because of Chiyue sect's signboard, but no buts." The 10th layer Qi refining cultivator flicked his sleeve and said, "I don't need to worry about their goods because of Chiyue sect's signboard. Who knows what kind of background this Luanji has?" Then he cupped his hands toward Xiaohua and said, "Senior Marshal Brother, I know the way to Chiyue sect. May I have the honor of showing you the way?" Xiaohua looked at the blushing waiter and then at the eager cultivator. He smiled and said to the waiter, "Brother waiter, you haven't told me your name yet, have you? How can I be taken care of if I go there?" "Brother waiter?" When the waiter heard this, his expression became even more excited and he stuttered, "I'm surnamed Fan, named Yi. I've been with Luan Jianming since I was young." Luan Jianming? When Xiaohua heard this, he couldn't help but frown. Needless to say, this was definitely the owner of Luanji's shop. How high could his cultivation be if he grew up with Fan Yi? A second layer Qi refining shopkeeper, what magic tools could he possibly refine? Fellow Taoist, you should go to Chiyue sect. The cultivator laughed loudly. Luan Jianming is a waiter of Luanji's shop. Fan Yi knew he said something wrong and hurriedly explained, "The shopkeeper of Luanji's shop is an elder from his clan, Luan Han." "Hee, thank you, brother waiter." Xiaohua waved his hand and the spirit stone floated in front of Fan Yi. Then he left the shop without looking back. Fan Yi held the spirit stone in his hand and his eyes were filled with gratitude. At this moment, a faintly discernible speck of light quietly appeared in Xiaohua's Buddha's heart. It appeared so ordinary that Xiaohua didn't notice it at all. Chapter 1690. Luanji store was indeed famous. Xiaohua stopped a spirit camel carriage and the driver immediately recognized the name. Xiaohua didn't even need to say a fifth word. Of course, after the spirit camel carriage traveled for a full hour, Xiaohua sat at the back of the carriage and looked at the scenery of Sobbing Moon City to his heart's content. Only then did they arrive at a relatively quiet place. Although it was called quiet, it was actually a remote place with few people. It was far less lively than the inn. At the end of a street that wasn't very wide, there was a shabby shop that wasn't too big standing there alone. There was a big hammerhead sign hanging on it, similar to a workshop in the secular world. Xiaohua looked around and shook his head. This kind of remote place, if it wasn't for Fan Ye's guidance, who would spend spirit stones to ride a spirit camel carriage here? Even if the 7 skills sect's magic tools are a bit more expensive, I'm afraid I can still take advantage of this little bit of spirit stones. However, the Seven Skills sect had chased after Xiaohua to kill him. Xiaohua had always disliked the Seven Skills sect, so how could he take care of their business? I won't even give half a spirit stone to the Seven Skills sect. Xiaohua curled his lips and walked toward Luanji's store. At the same time, Xiaohua's appearance also changed slightly. When he arrived in front of Luanji's store, he had already used the stealing the sky technique to change into another person. Luanji's store was quite big. All kinds of coarse materials were placed in different places. In the middle of the store was a very strange 5-star shaped counter. In the middle of the counter, a short and fat cultivator was actually sitting there and taking a nap. Yes, he was taking a nap. When Xiaohua saw this, he almost rubbed his eyes. Which cultivator didn't cultivate diligently in order to break through before the end of their lifespan? Even if they didn't make any progress, they still racked their brains to find a chance. He had never seen anyone napping during the day. Cough cough, Xiaohua stepped into the store and coughed twice. He released his divine sense and carefully observed the materials. Huff huff, Xiaohua's coughing not only didn't wake the fat man up, but also caused him to snore. Damn it. If I were to do that, wouldn't Master have flown into a rage? Xiaohua smiled bitterly and was too lazy to pay attention to him. He simply walked around the shop. Whenever he saw something he liked, he would reach out his hand and take the material in his hand, carefully observing it. Xiaohua had read through most of the jade slips regarding the refining of tools in Swallow Thunder Ridge. He had never truly practiced the Tao of refining, so it was hard to say how good he was. But in terms of identifying materials, Xiaohua was full of confidence. After he finished looking through the items in the store, he couldn't help but nod to himself. Fan Yi was right. The items in the store were indeed not bad. Not only was there a variety of items, but the quality was also excellent. Alas, cultivators are actually the same as mortals. They all care about fame. Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat and he thought. Moreover, the fragrance of wine is afraid of being hidden deep in the alleys. This Luanji store has some background, but its reputation can't compare to Seven Skills sects. Moreover, it's located in such a remote place. How can it be popular? Soon after, Xiaohua raised his head again. He saw that there were more than 10 partitions on the pentagonal counter. Each partition had some grids. The grids were of different sizes, and there were some small objects that looked like Dharma treasures but weren't Dharma treasures. When Xiaohua's gaze fell on a small object that looked like a peacock, his heart trembled and he couldn't help but walk over. That grid didn't have any fluctuations of spiritual energy, so it probably didn't have any restrictions. Xiaohua didn't even think about it and grabbed at the air. The peacock flew out of the grid. However, as soon as the peacock jumped out of the grid, a spark flew out from each of the 5 corners of the 5-star-shaped platform. These 5 sparks were also special. They were actually separated into 5 different colors and flew towards Xiaohua. Xiaohua was startled. Although the sparks were small, they were extremely powerful. With a sweep of his divine sense, he saw that the 5 sparks were rapidly absorbing the 5 elements' spiritual energy. They grew larger and larger. By the time they reached Xiaohua, they had already condensed into the size of a wicker basket. 5 different colors rapidly revolved within it, aiming straight for Xiaohua's chest. Xiaohua smiled. He stretched out his left hand and used an ice seal to seal the fireball. However, the instant the seal sealed the fireball fiercely expanded and absorbed the ice seal's magic power. Soon after, with a "prng" sound, it exploded. Xiaohua's expression changed when he saw this. His right hand didn't dare to be negligent. He grabbed at the air again and sealed the exploding fireball. Soon after, an explosive force came from his right hand. Xiaohua's hand shook twice before it gradually disappeared. Damn it, what kind of fireball is this? It's so powerful? Even a 12th layer qi refining cultivator might not be able to completely control it. Xiaohua muttered in his heart. Where did this little thief come from? Only now did the sweaty fatty wake up. He didn't have time to wipe away the sparkling saliva at the corner of his mouth. When he saw Xiaohua's young appearance, he immediately shouted, At the same time, he slapped his storage pouch and took out several yellow talismans. He looked around in a somewhat flustered manner. Xiaohua looked thoughtfully at the chaotic spiritual energy in his right hand and said, "Fellow Taoist, don't panic. I was just looking around." "Looking around? You can touch other people's things just by looking around?" the fatty said casually. He seemed to still be a bit sleepy. "Jamming? How can you be so impudent?" A rebuke came from behind the shop. An 11th layer Qi refining middle-aged cultivator quickly walked out. The fatty woke up at this moment and looked at Xiaohua. It would have been better if he didn't look, but when he did, he was shocked. He quickly threw the yellow talisman into his storage pouch and bowed. Junior Luan Jiaming greets Senior. That respectful look on his face showed that his attitude was very proper. "Hee, you're the Luan Jiaming that Fan Yi spoke of?" Xiaohua said with a smile. "It must be hard on you to be able to sleep in the middle of the day." Luan Jiaming's face was flushed red. He mumbled something but didn't know what to say. Fellow Taoist was recommended by Fan Yi. The cultivator who came later stepped forward and saluted. "I, Luan Han, greet fellow Taoist. Fan Yi is quite considerate. Fellow Taoist, take a look. All materials, magic tools, and so on, I will give fellow Taoist a discount." Hee. Xiaohua smiled and nodded. He pointed at the pentagonal counter and asked, "Let's not talk about other things first. I want to know what's going on with that fireball that contained the qi of the 5 elements?" "Oh, as expected, fellow Taoist has a good divine ability." Hearing Xiaohua's question, Luan Han's face also showed a trace of respect. "This is my Luan Ji's ancestral frigid flame. If you're not at the foundation establishment stage, you absolutely can't easily extinguish it." "Frigid flame?" Xiaohua slightly furrowed his brows. He carefully recalled but didn't seem to have any impression. Hee, what a pity. By Ai's generation, most of the frigid flame had already been lost. It can only be used to refine tools. But according to ancient legends, this flame is the flame seed of the celestial world's heavenly fire. At its peak, it has the ability to destroy heaven and earth. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't know, Luan Han proudly explained. Chapter 1691. Heavenly Flame Seed? When Xiaohua heard this, he couldn't help but laugh. The heavenly flame of the immortal world was something from legends. He already felt that it was amazing that he could control the true Samadhi fire, but this Luan family actually had a heavenly flame seed? This was truly hilarious. However, this fireball's power is really great. Although it might not be a heavenly flame seed, it's still very powerful. If I want to refine tools in the future, I'm afraid I'll need this kind of flame. Xiaohua muttered to himself. However, after thinking about it carefully, the corner of Xiaohua's mouth revealed a faintly discernible smile. "Fellow Taoist, are you interested in this doll?" Luan Han waved his hand and a strange spell was cast on the counter. The small peacock flew up and stopped in front of Luan Han. Luan Han stretched out his index finger and tapped the peacock's back. The peacock raised its head and let out a clear cry before spreading its wings and flying in the air. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the peacock retracted its wings and flew back into Luan Han's hand. "Fellow Taoist, what do you think of this peacock?" Luan Han said with a smile. "This is something young female cultivators like the most. If fellow Taoist has a dual cultivation partner, or children, you can buy it for them. It's the best gift." Seeing Xiaohua frown, Luan Han rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "This doll refining technique is unique to my Luanji shop. 7 Skills sect can't do it. If fellow Taoist is interested and you were introduced by Fan Yi, I will give you a discount of 30% of the spirit stones." Xiaohua glanced at Luan Han, but his gaze didn't fall on the peacock in his hand. He shook his head and said, "Fan Yi told I that this Luanji shop is an old shop in Weeping Moon City. It's the real deal. If it wasn't for bad luck, it would definitely be more famous than 7 Skills Sect's shop. But now, Sai, why did it only end up in the predicament of selling dolls?" Luan Han's expression changed slightly and his eyes narrowed. Then he smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist, you're wrong. Haven't you heard of the saying in the secular world? A poor man's ambition. Although my Luanji shop can refine powerful magic tools, what's the use if no one visits? Dolls? Although it's just for fun, it can earn spirit stones for my Luanji shop. If I don't sell this, do you think I'm going to sell beads? Besides, even though my Luanji store has a good foundation, it also depends on the customer's taste. Furthermore, the predicament that my Luan's shop is in isn't something that an outsider can see with a single glance. As Luan Han spoke, he placed the peacock back into the box, his tone slightly cold. Haha, Xiaohua chuckled and said, I didn't know that fellow Taoist Luan was also someone who didn't like to be under others. Could it be that fellow Taoist is this kind of person? Luan Han was a little angry in his heart. He actually did not ask for Xiaohua's name. Xiaohua ignored Luan Han's anger. He looked around and said, I didn't come here to debate with fellow Taoist Luan. I have a business deal to discuss with fellow Taoist Luan. I wonder if fellow Taoist Luan has any objections? Ha, I am a businessman. Why would I give away the spirit stones that are delivered to my door? Luan Han laughed. He waved his hand at Luan Jianming, who was a little panicked, and said, Jianming, serve fellow Taoist some tea. Yes, disciple understands. Luan Jianming welcomed him and prepared to go out from the counter. I wonder what fellow Taoist has taken a fancy to? Luan Han smiled apologetically. Xiaohua extended his hand and pointed at the materials in the store for artifact refinement. He said, I want to purchase some of the materials in your store. How about the price? All of the materials? Luan Han's face lit up as he asked. Xiaohua nodded. Jianming, serve fellow Taoist good tea. Luan Han raised his head and ordered Luan Jianming, who was about to enter the backyard. Yes, disciple understands. Luan Jianming saw that there was a big customer and was overjoyed in his heart. He responded loudly. Fellow Taoist wants to refine your own artifacts? Luan Han turned his head and smiled apologetically. And that's right. Xiaohua replied, in a while, I still have something to ask fellow Taoist Luan. I hope you won't be stingy with your guidance. Sure. Luan Han smiled and took out a storage pouch from the counter. With a wave of his hand, many materials were stored inside. Fellow Taoist Luan, why? Aren't you negotiating with I? Xiaohua was stunned. He was still preparing to haggle with the other party. Yet Luan Han smiled and said, fellow Taoist is a 12th level Qi refinement cultivator. Do you still lack spirit stones? I am underestimating fellow Taoist's status by negotiating with fellow Taoist. Xiaohua blinked his eyes. Looking at this cultivator who just said that poor people have short ambition, he didn't know how to answer. After Luan Han took some of the materials of various colors and handed them to Xiaohua, he asked, fellow Taoist, are these materials enough? Xiaohua looked and smiled. Fellow Taoist Luan, you should tell me the price first. Let's see if I have enough spirit stones in my storage pouch. Luan Han slightly nodded and transmitted a number to Xiaohua. And not bad. What Fan Yi said was right. This Luan Han's character is really good. Hearing the price, Xiaohua thought inwardly. Just as he was about to take out the spirit stones, his heart moved again. He smiled and said, these materials aren't enough. Fellow Taoist Luan, take 3 more. I will also triple the spirit stones. But Luan Han was overjoyed. He clapped his hands and said, fellow Taoist is so straightforward. I won't be unreasonable. Fellow Taoist only needs 2.5 more spirit stones. As he spoke, he took out more materials and handed them to Xiaohua. At this time, Luan Jianming served the spirit tea. Seeing that the materials in the store were much less, he was also happy and was much more respectful to Xiaohua. Xiaohua took a sip of the spirit tea and praised. He put the spirit stones in his storage pouch and handed them to Luan Han. Luan Han's divine sense swept over and knew that the number of spirit stones was not small. He smiled from ear to ear and said, fellow Taoist, this spirit tea is unique to my Weeping Moon City. If fellow Taoist likes it, I will give it to you. Then he ordered Luan Jianming to go back to the backyard to get the spirit tea. No need. Xiaohua hurriedly stopped him. He put away the materials and said, I still have something to discuss with fellow Taoist Luan. I just need fellow Taoist Luan to tell me everything you know. Sure. What questions does fellow Taoist have? Luan Han said with a smile. He was an expert in refining, so he was not afraid to ask about it. Xiaohua thought for a moment and said, I's Grandmaster has a very special material. Divine sense can't control it, and it's very heavy. Ordinary cultivators can't pick it up. Well, the Grandmaster has said that this material is not a demonic tool. He wants to refine this material into a special magic weapon. Does fellow Taoist Luan have any ideas? A material that can't be controlled with divine sense? And it's very heavy? Luan Han was stunned. He closed his eyes and thought for a moment. He shook his head slightly and said, I don't seem to have encountered this situation. Xiaohua's face was slightly disappointed. He glanced at the pentagonal table and said in a low voice, Fellow Taoist's ancestral frigid flame won't work? Of course. Luan Han was enlightened. He patted his forehead and said with a smile, I can't do it. But my frigid flame can burn everything. The material fellow Taoist mentioned is definitely not a problem. Fellow Taoist Luan, are you sure you can do it? Xiaohua's eyes were also filled with joy. He said, If possible, I will return to the mountain and ask Grandmaster to come over. When Luan Han heard that Xiaohua wanted to ask Grandmaster to come over, he immediately hesitated. If nothing unexpected happened, the Grandmaster of an aura refining cultivator should be a core formation cultivator. That was someone the Luan clan could not offend. How could they dare to ask a core formation cultivator to come personally? While Luan Han was hesitating, Xiaohua's brows slightly wrinkled. He seemed to have sensed something and his Buddhist sense swept outside. Xiaohua's expression immediately became wonderful. At this time, Luan Han made up his mind. He raised his head and said, I can't be sure about this matter. I still have to ask the Grandmaster to make a decision later. That's for the best. Xiaohua raised his brows and said with a smile, Then how about I accompany fellow Taoist Luan to see the Grandmaster together? Luan Han was even more surprised. But when he thought about how Xiaohua had just bought so many materials, he still nodded and said, Since fellow Taoist has such intentions, then please. Soon after, Xiaohua followed Luan Han into the rear courtyard. Just as Xiaohua's figure disappeared from inside the shop, 3 cultivators came in through the door of Luan Ji's shop. 1 man and 2 women. The man looked to be in his 40s or 50s and was in the middle stage of the foundation building realm. The 2 women looked to be in their 20s or 30s and were also in the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. The female cultivator at the front entered side by side with the male foundation building cultivator. Their behavior was very intimate. The female cultivator at the back had a dull expression, but when her gaze swept past Xiaohua's disappearing figure, she couldn't help but be slightly stunned. Why is this person's figure so familiar? Xiaohua. But soon after, the female cultivator smiled bitterly and shook her head. Xiaohua probably died long ago on Xiaoyu continent. Seniors. When Luan Jianming saw that there were actually foundation building cultivators coming over, he was bewildered. He promptly went to greet them and received them very respectfully. Xiaohua followed Luan Han into the rear courtyard. They walked through a layer of courtyards and arrived in front of a small house. Luan Han respectfully saluted and said, Martial uncle, disciple Luan Han requests an audience. After a long while, an aged voice echoed. Luan Han, do you need something? Didn't I tell you before? Family matters, go find someone else as soon as possible. This old man doesn't have much time left. I still have to cultivate in seclusion. Luan Han glanced at Xiaohua very awkwardly and replied as respectfully as before. Disciple met an honored guest today. This honored guest brought his core formation master to ask Disciple about a matter. Disciple didn't dare to take matters into his own hands. This time, martial uncle, please dispel my doubts. Right, I still haven't asked for fellow Taoist's name. Luan Han asked in a low voice. I am Jianghu. Xiaohua said with a smile. Alas, come in. Hearing that it was a matter related to core formation cultivators, Luan Han's martial uncle didn't dare to neglect and said with a sigh, "Fellow Taoist Jiang, please." Luan Han raised his hand and gestured. Xiaohua also wasn't polite and entered the small house. The inside of the small house was somewhat dusky and also didn't have too many furnishings. There was a bookshelf on the wall. On the bookshelf were several books and also several jade slips. In the innermost part of the small house was a cloud bed. On top of it was a white-haired old man with extremely many wrinkles on his face. He was sitting cross-legged, and his cultivation was at the early stage of foundation establishment. Chapter 1692. Seeing such an old foundation establishment cultivator, Xiaohua thought for a moment, then immediately stepped forward and bowed, sending a voice transmission. Junior Zhang Hua of the Imperial Thunder Sect greets Senior Luan. Imperial Thunder Sect? Hearing Xiaohua announce his name, the foundation establishment cultivator was stunned, and a trace of light flashed across his eyes. He also sat up straight, flicked his sleeves, and sent a sound transmission with an aged voice. "I am Luan Qing, and have already stopped asking about the old affairs of the clan. I wonder what little friend Zhang has to ask?" Luan Han heard Xiaohua's voice transmission and unconsciously frowned. "Luan Han, there's a foundation establishment cultivator in the shop. You should go greet him. Jianming is too young. I'm afraid he can't handle it," Luan Qing instructed. Luan Han naturally knew there was a foundation establishment cultivator coming, so he stood up and said, "Disciple will go now, fellow Zhang, please excuse me." When Luan Han left the hut, Luan Qing pointed her finger, and a light flashed, activating the restriction in the hut. "Little friend Zhang, if you have something to say, please say it." Luan Qing raised her head and stared at Xiaohua. Xiaohua repeated what he had told Luan Han before and said with an apologetic smile, "This thing was found in a dangerous place by martial ancestor. He knew it had great use, but he didn't know how to refine it. Even the Imperial Thunder Sect's artifact refining grandmasters couldn't think of a way. Junior came out to travel this time with the intention of helping martial ancestor find a suitable method. Just now, in the shop of Luan Ji, I saw the frigid flame. This time, I boldly ask Senior to enlighten me. Can this frigid flame temper this strange thing?" "Alas, I'm afraid it can't." Luan Qing slightly shook her head. She stretched out her hand, and a huge ball of 5-colored flame appeared in the center of her palm, swallowing the surrounding 5-element spiritual energy. But the strange thing was, Xiaohua didn't feel any heat. "Little friend Zhang, take a look. This frigid flame is admittedly the refining flame of my Luan Ji, but its power is already far inferior to before. It's certainly more than enough to refine ordinary magic tools, but it's beyond the power to refine elementary magic treasures. Not to mention the special material of your sect's martial ancestor. According to what this old man has seen and heard, that material must be something from beyond the heavens. And it is very likely to be something from beyond the heavens of the demon realm. Otherwise, it would be impossible for it to be so heavy and uncontrollable by divine sense. For this kind of material, we can only use demonic flames or the refining methods of the demon realm. There is no other way." "Ah? Demonic fire? The refining method of the devil realm." Xiaohua's heart shook. That's right, Xiaohua had thought for a long time, but he had never considered the demon realm. The great wisdom heavy sword was similar to a demon weapon, so the demon realm's refining method would naturally have an effect on it. But where was the devil realm? How could he, a cultivator from the human realm, go to the devil realm? For Xiaohua, this seemed to be something impossible. Could it be that there's no other way? Xiaohua pondered for a moment and asked in a low voice. Luan Qing laughed and said, "According to this old man's thoughts, other than the methods of the devil realm, there seems to be a legendary method of refining one's heart. However, your sect is one of the most famous sects in the country of Xi. Perhaps your sect's Qi refining grandmaster knows the method of refining one's heart. Since they can't do anything about it, this old man will only make a fool of himself." The method of refining one's heart. Xiaohua secretly noted it down. The refining jade slip he obtained from Swallow Thunder Ridge didn't mention the method of refining one's heart. He also didn't know whether Swallow Thunder Ridge had the method of refining one's heart. Other than the method of refining one's heart? Xiaohua still didn't give up. Luan Qing blinked and said with a smile, other than the method of refining one's heart, perhaps my Luan family's frigid death flame can reach Deshang. Xiaohua's eyes flashed and he said with a smile, why can't the frigid death flame reach Deshang? It's a long story. Luan Qing said with a smile, not to mention that my Luan family's frigid death flame has been damaged for a long time. The number of disciples who can practice this fire art is also very few. Sigh, forget it, this is my Luan family's ancestral inheritance, it's not worth telling outsiders. Seeing Luan Qing brush her sleeve and unwilling to say more, Xiaohua narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, since no one in the Luan family can successfully practice this frigid death flame, then, Senior Luan, this frigid death flame's fire art, can you part with it? Luan Qing stared blankly, then a severe light flashed in her eyes. Staring at Xiaohua for a moment, she said with a sneer, little friend Zhang, I respect you as a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, that's why I'm talking to you nicely. This frigid death flame's fire art is my Luan family's ancestral inheritance. If I give it to you, how can my Luan family establish itself in Xiaoyu continent? Haha, Xiaohua wasn't afraid of Luan Qing and said with a smile, if it's the Luan family's secret art, if it's the secret art that the Luan family relies on to establish itself, how can it be used in Luan family's shop? Only for defensive arrays? Senior Luan, this junior is sincerely making a deal with senior. If senior has any conditions, please feel free to state them. If junior is able to agree, I'll definitely agree without hesitation. This. Xiaohua's words hit Luan Qing's soft spot. That's right, the frigid death flame has been used in arrays, what's there to talk about keeping it a secret? However, Luan Qing still shook her head, where it's used is my Luan family's business. Little friend Zhang doesn't have the qualifications to say. I feel that the reason why things in this world are things is because there are things of equivalent value that can be exchanged. Senior Luan isn't willing to exchange, is it because you think that I's cultivation is insufficient and can't take out something of equivalent value to the frigid death flame? Xiaohua didn't beat around the bush and directly said. Luan Qing's gaze flickered, but she didn't say a word. Seeing this, Xiaohua secretly rejoiced. Since she didn't say anything, that means there's room to bargain. Thinking for a moment, Xiaohua extended his hand. A cluster of Samadhi true fire was born from the palm of his hand. That pure purple flame had a trace of scarlet. Samadhi true fire? Luan Qing clearly knew what it was and cried out in surprise, little friend Zhang, you're only at the Qi refinement realm. How can you use Samadhi true fire? This is naturally a bit of Junior's privacy. Xiaohua said with a smile, however, in order to express my sincerity with Senior, I have no choice but to let Senior take a look. Luan Qing took a deep breath and said, little friend Zhang wants to exchange the fire technique of Samadhi true fire and the secret to using fire techniques at the Qi refinement realm with my Luan clan? I won't hide it from Senior, Junior's physique is special. That's why I'm able to use Samadhi true fire at the Qi refinement realm. There's no secret to this. What Junior can exchange is only the fire technique of Samadhi true fire. Xiaohua said without hiding anything. Hearing this, Luan Qing shook her head. Samadhi true fire's fire technique is indeed rare, but a beginner's Samadhi true fire can't be used to refine weapons. Even if it can be used to refine weapons in the future, it may not be comparable to my Luan family's frigid death flame. But Junior's fire technique of Samadhi true fire is complete. Xiaohua said with a smile. Luan Qing thought for a moment, but still shook her head. Samadhi true fire's fire technique should already be comparable to frigid death flame's fire technique. Xiaohua said with a smile, however, since Senior Ling still wants to bargain, how about adding this thing? As he spoke, Xiaohua took out another item. Chapter 1693. Luan Qing's eyes flashed with a trace of doubt. Looking at the jade box that Xiaohua handed over, he really couldn't think of what Xiaohua could take out that could move his heart. Senior Luan, don't you want to open it and take a look? Xiaohua's jade box had a restriction that isolated spiritual sense, so Luan Qing couldn't see through it with his foundation establishment cultivation. Hee, this old man wants to see. Little friend Zhang is so confident, this jade box must have. Luan Qing took it with a smile and opened the jade box while speaking. When he saw what was inside the jade box, he couldn't help but exclaim, "Mother and child spirit fruit. 1,000-year-old mother and child spirit fruit." Indeed, in that jade box, a mother and child spirit fruit with golden runes faintly flowing on its surface was peacefully lying there. The golden runes also indicated the age of this mother and child spirit fruit. Looking at Luan Qing's surprised expression, Xiaohua snickered in his heart. Ever since he gave the 1,000-year-old mother and child spirit fruit to eldest senior brother Xiang Yang, he had a plan in his heart. Because with the improvement of his cultivation, the age of the various spiritual herbs and spiritual fruits in the space also increased every day. If he didn't pick them diligently, he was afraid that each spiritual herb would be over 10,000 years old. These 10,000 years old things were certainly good, but it was quite dangerous to trade them. Therefore, Xiaohua treated the mother and child spirit fruit the same as other rare spiritual herbs. He divided the area according to the age of 500 years, 1,000 years, and so on. Every once in a while, he would pick them once to ensure that all the spiritual herbs and spiritual fruits of each age were preserved. Although the mother and child spirit fruit was different from other spiritual fruits, Xiaohua had kept it in the jade box for thousands of years. And now, the one in the space was already thousands of years old. Senior Luan, this mother and child spirit fruit was obtained by my master in an auction. One of them has already been taken by my 14th senior brother, who broke through the bottleneck of the early stage of foundation establishment. This spiritual fruit was given to this junior by my master to be used for future breakthroughs. Xiaohua waited for Luan Qing's surprise to fade a little, then said with a smile, "However, this junior is still some distance away from foundation establishment. How can I break through the early stage of foundation establishment? What's more, master's matter is a big deal. If I can use this thing to exchange for the fire art and solve master's problem, why can't I break through my bottleneck?" Luan Qing stared into Xiaohua's eyes, his gaze flickering. After a short moment, he glanced at the mother-child spirit fruit and said in a deep voice, "This old man has been stuck at the bottleneck of the early stage of foundation establishment for several decades. 20 years ago, I already took the Origin Splendor pill. Young friend Zhang, do you think this old man still has a chance?" Xiaohua knew that the Essence Splendor pill was a medicinal pill used by early foundation establishment cultivators to break through their barriers. It was concocted from bright flower fruit, essence returning grass, Lian green fruit, Dan He, and other rare spiritual plants. Among them, Dan He was the rarest, but it was also the most important. However, it was also the least used. Of course, he didn't know if eldest senior brother Xiang Yang had taken it or not, but since Weeping Moon City had the Lian green fruit, it was normal for Luan Qing to have taken the Hua Yuan pill. Therefore, Xiaohua smiled and said, "My 14th senior brother has also taken the Hua Yuan pill. Since he could use the mother-child spirit fruit to break through the bottleneck, Senior Luan should be able to do so as well. Of course, as for whether Senior Luan can really do it, this junior can't guarantee." Xiaohua's voice had just fallen when suddenly, a murderous intent came from where Luan Qing was. Xiaohua's eyes narrowed slightly. He glanced at Luan Qing's hands that were hidden in his Taoist robe. His expression didn't change as he chuckled and said, "This is this junior's bottom line. This junior sincerely wants to help martial ancestor. If Senior Luan isn't willing, then this junior won't force it. Oh, right, I heard from the senior brother in the inn that there is a mysterious place in Weeping Moon City that can repair magic tools and magic weapons. Presumably, they also have a fire art similar to Ling Yi's Zhuhua. After this junior and senior brother repair the magic weapons, this junior can also make a deal with them. Presumably, this is also okay, right?" Facing an early foundation establishment cultivator at such a close distance, to be honest, Xiaohua wasn't the slightest bit afraid. After the battle with Zhen Hao and Zhen Ming, he had incomparable confidence in his Zhu Meng. Even an early foundation establishment cultivator of the Imperial Thunder School couldn't avoid it. How could a foundation establishment cultivator of the Luan family be his opponent? Looking at Xiaohua's confident words and then looking at Xiaohua's eyes that didn't have the slightest trace of panic, Luan Qing's killing intent suddenly became discouraged. A kind of absurd feeling arose spontaneously, as if this cultivator of the 12th layer of qi refining could easily kill him, even if he had already set up a powerful restriction around the hut. After the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, Luan Qingkai suddenly smiled, and his killing intent was extinguished. He said, "Little friend Zhang is indeed a filial person. For the sake of your master, you actually gave up the opportunity to break through to the early stage of the foundation establishment stage. Since that's the case, how can this old man not help you?" As he said this, he waved his sleeve and the jade box disappeared. A trace of a smile appeared on Xiaohua's face. He took out the jade slip that recorded the Samadhi True Fire from his space and handed it to Luan Qing. He said, "Junior obtained this from a cultivator. It doesn't have much to do with my Imperial Thunder School. Senior Luan, please feel free to use it." Good. Luan Qing was overjoyed. He took it and scanned it with his divine sense. He nodded. This Samadhi True Fire is complete. In the past, this old man also obtained one, but it was abnormally damaged and couldn't be used. After Luan Qing put away the Samadhi True Fire art, he took out a rather old jade slip and handed it over. He said, "This is the Ling Yi Fire art that this old man comprehended. It contains this old man's understanding. Little friend Zhang, please take it." "Many thanks, Senior Luan." Xiaohua was somewhat surprised. He didn't expect Luan Qing to be so generous. Taking out the jade slip, Xiaohua casually scanned it and stored it in his space. He knew Luan Qing wouldn't deceive him with false information. "What? Little friend Zhang, won't you look carefully?" A trace of a strange smile appeared on Luan Qing's face. "There's no need, right?" Xiaohua was slightly dazed. Yet Luan Qing shook his head. "Little friend Zhang should still look carefully? Otherwise, if there's any mishap and little friend Zhang returns to the Imperial Thunder Sect to denounce us, my Luan family won't be able to bear it." Hearing these words, Xiaohua's heart suddenly thumped. Not good. Sure enough, when he took out the jade slip again and looked carefully for a moment, a trace of gloominess appeared on his face. "I didn't expect. This Ling Yi Fire art is actually different from the Samadhi True Fire." Xiaohua was endlessly regretful in his heart. A trace of bitterness appeared in his mouth. The Samadhi True Fire is an ethereal fire. The fire art that uses the Samadhi True Fire can be created on its own. But this Ling Yi Fire is a fire of the 5 elements. It can't be created out of thin air. It must have a flame seed. In other words, a flame seed. Sigh, didn't Luan Han say it just now? His Luan family's Ling Yi Fire is the flame seed of the immortal realm. I'm afraid that's the meaning behind it, right? I thought that I was infallible and exchanged fire arts with others. Not to mention that I suffered a loss in the fire art, even that 1,000-year-old child mother spirit fruit was given away to others for nothing. No wonder. Luan Qing wanted me to look clearly, and no wonder Luan Qing could easily take out the Luan family's ancestral fire art to exchange. Seeing the regret on Xiaohua's face, Luan Qing smiled and said, "Little friend Zhang, did you understand?" Suddenly, Xiaohua smiled and put away the jade slip. He said, "Reporting to Senior Luan, Junior already understood. This is all Junior's recklessness. It can't be blamed on Senior Luan." Good. Luan Qing's face revealed a strange expression. He clapped his hands and said, as expected of a disciple of a famous sect, "Only now do I truly believe in little friend Zhang." As he spoke, Luan Qing slapped his forehead. A speck of 5-colored fire flew out from his glabella and landed in Luan Qing's palm. "This is a speck of the fire seed that I painstakingly cultivated." Although little friend Zhang only exchanged fire arts, without this fire seed, that fire art is just trash. Little friend Zhang took so many things to exchange for the fire art, but you suffered a big loss. Luan Qing smiled and said, "Little friend Zhang is so magnanimous, how can I cherish it? Otherwise, even if you took the child mother spirit fruit, it would be impossible to break through the bottleneck. Finished speaking, he pointed his finger. That five-colored fire flew in front of Xiaohua's eyes. His eyes watched the 5 colors of the 5-colored fire faintly circulate. A burst of joy emerged in Xiaohua's heart. He opened his mouth and that fire was immediately absorbed into his body. Luan Qing was startled. He didn't expect Xiaohua to be able to absorb the icicle flame into his body so easily. This kind of absorption method was commonly used by foundation establishment or golden core cultivators to absorb magic treasures. Perhaps what I said about magic treasures just now wasn't false. Luan Qing had a trace of lingering fear. At the same time, he rejoiced that he reined in the horse at the precipice in time. Thus, Luan Qing's eyes turned and he said, "Little friend Zhang, I still have something to remind little friend Zhang." "Senior Luan, please speak. Junior is all ears." Xiaohua was in a great mood and said with a smile, "My Luan family's icicle flame is extremely powerful. According to ancient legends, it's the fire seed of the immortal realm's fire." Luan Qing organized his thoughts and said, "But now little friend Zhang has also seen it. Right now, my Luan family's icicle flame can only be used for refining. It's even used for setting up formations. It really doesn't match its reputation. The name of the immortal realm's fire seed has already become a joke in the Dawn Rain continent." Xiaohua slightly nodded. He didn't have any expectations for this icicle flame. He only wanted to use it for refining, especially to temper the great wisdom sword. As for whether or not it was the fire seed of the immortal realm's fire seed, he didn't care. The reason why it ended up like this is also related to the cultivation of the icicle flame. Luan Qing said again, "I believe that little friend Zhang has already somewhat understood. The cultivation of this icicle flame is completely a process of cultivation. You must have a fire seed in order to cultivate your own icicle flame. And this fire seed directly determines the power and quality of the icicle flame. According to my Luan family's records, when the Luan family was at its peak, my icicle flame had the ability to destroy the heavens and earth. Even the so-called large sects at that time had to avoid it. And as time passed, my Luan family's fire seed became weaker and weaker, and also more and more disorderly. Naturally, its power also became more and more unbearable. Chapter 1694. After the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, the door to Luan Qing's hut opened, and an expressionless Xiaohua came out. He then turned around, bowed deeply, and followed a boy who had been waiting outside for a long time to walk to the front of Luan's shop. As he walked, Xiaohua pondered. Senior Luan said clearly that this frigid flame relies entirely on the original flame. If I use the flame he gave me to cultivate it, I can naturally produce my own frigid flame. Of course, this frigid flame can also be used to refine tools, but it will lose a lot of its magical powers. But when it comes to magical powers, Senior Luan is vague, as if he himself doesn't understand. This is strange. But what if I don't use Senior Luan's flame? Where would I go to find the flame of the 5 elements? Especially the flame of the 5 elements that Senior Luan mentioned? That flame of the 5 elements is the real frigid flame, the flame of the true immortal realm. This world, I'm afraid it has never existed, right? Perhaps only the immortal realm has it. Xiaohua shook his head. What is the origin of the 5 elements? Just as he was thinking, a foundation establishment cultivator's divine sense swept over, and at the same time, several gazes stopped on Xiaohua's face. The boy also said in a low voice, "This disciple will see you off here. Fellow Taoist, please." "Thank you, fellow Taoist." Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, seemingly not arrogant because of the boy's low cultivation level. Seeing that the boy was a bit uneasy, Xiaohua raised his head and looked at Luan's shop. When he saw the disappointed expression on the face of a 12th layer qi refining female cultivator, he couldn't help but frown and secretly say, "Why haven't they left yet?" This female cultivator was none other than Xiaohua's senior sister, Xiao Xianrui. Soon after, Xiaohua's gaze turned from Xiao Xianrui's face to the other two cultivators. The other one had a charming face and a curvy figure. Naturally, she was none other than Jiang Yen of Hundred Herbs sect. However, when Xiaohua saw her more than 10 years ago, Jiang Yen was in the 11th layer of qi refining. Now, she was at the peak of the 12th layer. Moreover, her eyebrows were raised, and the corners of her eyes were charming. Needless to say, she had already dual cultivated with someone. In the end, Xiaohua's gaze landed on the Foundation Establishment Cultivator. This Foundation Establishment Cultivator was not Jiang Fan. This cultivator had a short stature and was even shorter than Jiang Yen, who was standing next to him. Moreover, this Foundation Establishment Cultivator looked like a burly man. Rather than calling him an immortal cultivator, it would be better to call him a farmer who managed a farm. The worst thing was that after this cultivator's gaze swept past Xiaohua, he didn't pay any attention to him. He only tightly stuck the corner of his eyes to Xiao Xinrui's body, as if there was something there that attracted him. "Oh, fellow Taoist Zhang, you're out?" When Luan Han saw Xiaohua come out, he immediately went to greet him. After all, Xiaohua was very generous, completely unlike this Foundation Establishment Cultivator. He looked left and right, but didn't take out any spirit stones. Moreover, Jiang Yuan, who was next to him, was full of ridicule. She said something about how they couldn't compare to the Seven Skills sect, and how they were deceived by the waiter. Her words clearly indicated that she wanted Luan Han to lower the price. If it was before, Luan Han might have tolerated it. However, Xiaohua had just been generous. Luan Han despised him in his heart and was too lazy to lower the price. Although his mouth was respectful, in his heart he had already trampled on their image countless times. Now that he saw Xiaohua come out, he naturally greeted him warmly. Thank you for your guidance, fellow Taoist Luan." Xiaohua smiled and cupped his hands. "Although I didn't get anything particularly useful, this trip wasn't in vain." No problem, no problem." Luan Han grinned. "Fellow Taoist Zhang is so forthright, you'll be welcomed anywhere." As he spoke, he intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Jiang Yen. "Fellow Taoist Luan, what do you mean by that?" Jiang Yen was furious. After all, she was the young master of the Hundred Herbs sect. When had she ever been looked down upon like this? "Oh, fellow Taoist Zhang, what did I say? What did I mean? I was just praising fellow Taoist Zhang for being generous. I didn't say others weren't generous." How could Luan Han be afraid of the Hundred Herbs sect? He naturally retorted. "Do." Jiang Yen raised her eyebrows and her chest heaved up and down. She was about to get angry. "Sister." Xiao Xinrui's gaze shifted from Xiaohua's somewhat familiar figure and unfamiliar face to her. She quickly whispered, "This is Weeping Moon City. It's better to be careful." Seeing that the Foundation Establishment Cultivator didn't say anything and was still looking at Xiao Xinrui out of the corner of his eyes, Jiang Yen couldn't help but feel angry. She sneered and said, "What? You want to be careful in Weeping Moon City? Why didn't you say that when my big brother was here? He just went back to build his foundation and you came out to talk?" "Sister?" Xiao Xinrui was stunned. She raised her head and looked at Jiang Yen. She couldn't understand why Jiang Yen was acting so strangely. "I wanted to go to the Seven Skills sect's shop, but you said this shop had a good reputation and insisted on coming here. This is your first time in Weeping Moon City, right? How do you know this shop has a good reputation?" "I know. You must have been here before. But who did you come with? No wonder you didn't go with my big brother when he went back to build his foundation. So you wanted to come to Weeping Moon City. What's your purpose in coming to Weeping Moon City? Are you looking for someone? Is this person in Luanji's shop?" Jiang Yen looked at Xiaohua as she spoke. Xiaohua's eyes widened and he helplessly rubbed his chin. He wanted to leave, but the one being bullied was Xiao Xinrui. He naturally had to stay. Senior sister really is enduring humiliation. Every day in Hundred Herbs sect must be like a year. Xiaohua's heart was filled with hatred. It's a pity that I'm only at the early stage of foundation establishment. Otherwise, I would definitely kill my way to Hundred Herbs sect. Sister, how can you say that? This isn't Hundred Herbs sect. How can we let outsiders see us as a joke? Xiao Xinrui was anxious. She stepped forward and tugged at Jiang Yan's sleeve. What are you tugging at? Jiang Yan impatiently tugged at her sleeve and said with extreme annoyance, I don't know what my big brother was thinking that day, but he took a fancy to you. I don't know how many elixirs and miraculous medicines he used to raise your cultivation to the 12th level of qi refining. But, where is foundation establishment? You've been cultivating for 10 years. Why haven't you reached foundation establishment? My 100 Herbs sect's elixirs have all been thrown into the water. When she heard foundation establishment, Xiao Xinrui's face turned pale. Her eyes were watery. She whispered in shame, Sister-in-law has done her best. Foundation establishment isn't something that can be achieved just because you say so. Sister-in-law didn't come to 100 Herbs sect because she wanted to gain more experience and have more hope of reaching foundation establishment. Hee, your words are better than a song. Who knows what you mean? Who knows what you're planning? Does this man? Jiang Yan saw that Xiaohua's cultivation was only at the 12th level of qi refining. She was emboldened. She glanced at him and sneered. The spiritual energy in Luanji's shop suddenly became chaotic. Then there was another pa sound. Everyone in Luanji's shop was stunned. Chapter 1695. You, an aura refining cultivator, actually dared to hit me? Jiang Yan covered her face with one hand. There were 2 reddish marks on her jade-white face. They were the marks left by Xiaohua's left hand. Xiaohua, on the other hand, was looking at the foundation establishment cultivator next to Jiang Yan. His eyes flashed with a cold glint as he said coldly, This young master is a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Which sect are you from? You can talk about your own matters behind closed doors. Why involve this young master for no reason? This young master's slap was only a warning. If you provoke this young master again, this young master will send out the thunder sound transmitting talisman from my sect and kill you. This young master doesn't believe that Fairy Chiue can ignore the fact that a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect is being bullied. Hearing Xiaohua say that he was a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, the Foundation Establishment cultivator, who had just released his pressure and taken out his magic tool, had a huge change in expression. He was filled with regret. In fact, as early as a moment ago, when he saw Xiaohua's face suddenly change color and his figure sway, he waved his hand and cast a spell, wanting to block Xiaohua. Who would have thought that the spell he was full of confidence in couldn't block Xiaohua at all? Xiaohua also cast a spell and easily broke through his defense. Moreover, Xiaohua was right in front of him. In the blink of an eye, Xiaohua's palm slapped Jiang Lian's face. Although Jiang Lian tried his best to dodge, Xiaohua's movements were really too fast. This is probably the Imperial Thunder sect's thunder escape technique. That Foundation Establishment cultivator thought to himself, moreover, although this aura refining cultivator is under my pressure, he's not afraid of me at all. If he wasn't confident, how could it be possible? Even if I can kill him, what about Luan's shop? What about Sobbing Moon City? It's hard to hide the shame. The Foundation Establishment cultivator secretly complained. The Imperial Thunder sect? Wan Han was also shocked. Seeing the confrontation between Xiaohua and that Foundation Establishment cultivator, he hurriedly took half a step forward and bowed deeply. He said to the 2 of them, Senior Yu, fellow Taoist Zhang, please don't be impatient. For I's sake, let's both take half a step back. Firstly, this is a misunderstanding. Secondly, this is Sobbing Moon City. Oh, that's fine. Fellow Taoist Luan, I have received a lot of benefits from you. How could I make things difficult for you? This is Senior Yu, right? Junior is a little rough and inexperienced, so I've made Senior laugh. I hope Senior can forgive me for my rudeness. Xiaohua immediately said with a bright smile. Seeing that Xiaohua was still able to speak so normally under his pressure, Senior Yu was shocked and hurriedly withdrew his pressure. He said with a smile, It was my wife who spoke too much and provoked little friend Zhang. How can you blame it all on little friend Zhang? I apologize on behalf of my wife. When Xiaohua saw the foundation-building cultivator withdraw his oppressive might, he immediately bowed in greeting. Bowing to a foundation-building cultivator wasn't a big deal, but the foundation-building cultivator raised his arm and blocked Xiaohua's salute. Xiaohua also seized the opportunity to get up and laughed. Everything is a misunderstanding. I am Zhang Hua from the lightning controlling sect. I still haven't asked for senior's name. I am Yu Tsong from the 10,000 Flowers Valley. The foundation establishment cultivator cupped his hands and said. Then he pointed at Jianghu and said, "This is I's humble Jianghu." Then he pointed at Xiao Xinrui and said, "This is Xiao Xinrui, the wife of the 100 Herbs Gate's young master." Xiaohua greeted the two with a smile. Jianghu clenched her teeth and returned the greeting under Yu Tsong's strict gaze. Xiao Xinrui, on the other hand, had already determined that Xiaohua wasn't Xiaohua. She greeted Xiaohua with an indifferent expression. After the greeting, Xiaohua said with a smile, "Senior Yu, it's rare for Senior to be so magnanimous. Come, I wonder what Senior has taken a fancy to in this store. Junior will buy it to apologize to fellow Taoist Jiang." "Don't mention it, there's no need. Isn't there a saying in the secular world? No discord, no concord. Since we know each other, there's no need to mention the previous matters." Yu Tsong flicked his big sleeve and said, "I actually admire fellow Taoist Shang's boldness. If I have time, I will hold a banquet in the drunken Immortal Pavilion and invite fellow Taoist Zhang or your sect's teachers to come over for a chat. How about it?" This is difficult." Xiaohua spread his hands and said, "I want to have a chat with Senior Yu, but the timing isn't right." No matter. Yu Tsong waved his hand again and again. "Since it's not right, then forget it. Then Junior has been rude." Xiaohua cupped his hands and bid farewell. "Junior will take his leave first." When Yu Tsong nodded with a smile, Xiaohua said to Luan Han again, "Fellow Taoist Luan, bring the peacock from the box. I will give it to my junior sister." As he said that, he didn't ask any questions and handed over some high-grade spirit stones. Luan Han couldn't stop smiling and waved his hand again and again. "There's no need for so many." Xiaohua took the spirit stones and threw them on the table with a wave of his hand. That fatty Luan Jiaming looked at Luan Han's expression and quickly put away the spirit stones and took out the peacock doll. Seeing the peacock doll, Xiao Xinrui couldn't help but open her mouth slightly. This doll was far inferior to the peacock fantasy, but it was still very beautiful. Xiao Xinrui had always liked peacocks, so it was natural for her to be envious. Xiaohua was originally paying attention to Xiao Xinrui. Seeing this, he smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist Xiao also likes this peacock?" Xiao Xinrui knew that he was testing her, so she glanced at Xiaohua and said indifferently, "It's not that I like it, but I've seen something similar before." "Oh, so it's like that?" Xiaohua nodded, glanced at Yu Tsong and said with a smile, "Junior just said that he wanted to apologize to Senior. What a coincidence, this thing is for fellow Taoist Xiao. Goodbye." As he said that, Xiaohua waved his hand and the peacock flew in front of Xiao Xinrui and stopped. Xiaohua cupped his hands and walked out of Luan Ji's shop without looking back. This. Xiao Xinrui was slightly stunned. She wanted to greet Xiaohua, but she looked at Yukong. After all, Xiaohua said that to Yukong, since it's like this, fellow Taoist Xiao should accept it. Yu Tsong smiled and stared at Xiao Xinrui with a fervent gaze. Then she looked at Xiaohua's gradually disappearing figure with thought-provoking eyes. "Husband." It was clearly the lowly concubine who was beaten. "How did my sister-in-law get away with it?" Jiang couldn't help but become anxious again. Her voice fell into Xiaohua's ears as he walked out of the shop. 100 Grass sect really is unscrupulous. In order to annex Shanghuaming, they used despicable means to kill Xiao Yuehong and 2 senior martial brothers. In order to expand their power, they married their daughter to a dwarf from 100 Flower Valley. An early foundation establishment cultivator can make 100 Grass sect act like this. No wonder Yu Tsong didn't dare to cause trouble when he knew I was a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect. Xiaohua sneered. After walking for a while and seeing that there was no one around, he walked into a dark corner. Not long after, a cultivator with a different appearance, figure, and cultivation base walked out of the dark corner. He looked around and slowly returned to Luanji's shop. Outside Luanji's shop, Yutsong and the others had already come out. They were walking out of this remote street. The three of them had completely different expressions on their faces. Jianghu was angry, but her eyes kept glancing at Xiao Xianrui. Xiao Xianrui's face was full of awkwardness. Although she wasn't holding the peacock doll in her hand, it was as if the doll was in her hand. She looked at Yutsong again. His face was expressionless, but there was a kind of gloominess in his eyes, as if he was angry and jealous. Just a few steps away from Luanji's shop, Jianghu opened her mouth and said sarcastically, "Husband, you look so mighty in front of me every day. How come you met a 12th-layer qi refining brat? Shut up." Without waiting for Jianghu to finish, Yutsong shouted, his eyes wide open. He glared at Jianghu and said, "Isn't it all because of you? It's fine if you talk nonsense, but you have no reason to drag in a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. What kind of sect is the Imperial Thunder Sect? Do you still need me to tell you? If it was a disciple of an ordinary sect, how could I let you suffer? Even if I have to risk being punished by Fairy Chiue, I will kill this bastard with one palm." Jianghu gritted her teeth. She knew that Yutsong was right. If an accident really happened to a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, the Imperial Thunder Sect could destroy the 100 Herbs Gate with one little toe. As for the 100 Flowers Valley, maybe they could do it with 3 or 4 little toes. Wife, don't be angry. We can't fight with a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect in Chiyu City, but I didn't say that we can't fight outside. Yutsong's face showed a trace of affection. He said in a low voice, "I've already used some means to mark that brat called Jianghu. When we get out of Chiyu City, I will avenge you." Hearing this, Jianghu beamed with joy. Her eyes were like silk. She took Yutsong's hand and said, "This lowly concubine knows that my husband loves me the most." Yutsong's eyes also flashed with a lustful light, which then fell on Xiao Xianrui. "By the way, husband, didn't Jianghu say that he was with a master of the Imperial Thunder Sect? If there is a Foundation Establishment cultivator, you have to be careful. Don't fight, or you will cause trouble for the 100 Flowers Valley and the 100 Herbs Gate." Jianghu thought again and hurriedly said with concern, "Why don't we just let it go? I'm not injured anyway." "You're indeed a good wife and mother. I understand. For your sake, I won't bicker with the Imperial Thunder Sect." Yutsong used his hand to carefully stroke Jianghu's butt. He narrowed his eyes and said, "When we get back to the inn, we will rest for a night. Tomorrow I will go out and take a look. If that bastard has already left, I will let him go." Hearing Yutsong say that they would rest for a night, Jianghu's eyes seemed to be about to water. Xiao Xianrui frowned and said in a low voice, "Senior Yu, my husband has already returned to Yellow Flower Ridge. I don't want to train anymore. I will go back now and bid farewell to you." Sister-in-law should have gone back long ago. Jianghu's face was bright red as she spoke. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, why don't you stay for a few more days?" Yutsong's face was somewhat disappointed. He urged her to stay. "You just had a conflict with the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples. If they hold a grudge, the way back will not be safe. Wait a few more days, I will personally send you off." "Thank you for your concern, Senior. I will take my leave." Xiao Xianrui bowed her head, cupped her hands, and quickly left. "You and the others escort young sect master's wife away." Jianghu raised her head and shouted at the 100 Herbs Gate disciples who were around the 9th layer of qi refining. "Yes, disciple understands." After the disciples agreed, they followed Xiao Xianrui, who had her head lowered, and left. The other disciples followed Jianghu and Yukong. When they were far away, Xiaohua's figure gradually appeared in a corner of the street. He patted a shiny invisibility talisman in his hand and put it back into his space. "Damn it, where did Yutsong leave a mark on my body? Why can't I find it after searching for so long with my Buddhist awareness?" Xiaohua saw that there was no one nearby and blurted out curses. Chapter 1696. Xiao Xinrui was very sad. Unspeakable sadness. Perhaps seeing Xiao Hua's back reminded her of the past that she didn't want to remember, which made her sad. Or maybe the peacock doll that Xiao Hua gave her reminded her of the peacock fantasy, her birthday, and the years when she was protected by her family, which made her sad. Or maybe it was because Xiao Hua claimed to be a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect and forced Yu Tsong, who was at the early stage of the Foundation establishment realm, not daring to make things difficult for him. Or maybe it was because of her background and self-pity. Or maybe it was because the arrogant Xiao Hua was at the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm, which made her think of her own 12th layer of the Qi refining realm and the knot in her heart that she couldn't break through to the Foundation establishment realm. In short, Xiao Xinrui stepped on the spirit camel carriage absent-mindedly. Surrounded by several disciples of the 100 Herbs sect, she randomly chose a direction and left the Weeping Moon City. However, after everyone had flown for half a meal, a disciple finally mustered the courage to call out in a low voice, "Young madam, where are we going?" "Back to the 100 Herbs sect, of course." Xiao Xinrui replied angrily. "But, are we going to fly back to the 100 Herbs sect like this?" The disciple whispered. The ship in the sect was taken away by the young master. "How can we, alas?" Hearing this, Xiao Xinrui immediately stopped in the air. The Weeping Moon City was very far from the 100 Herbs sect, and now was not the time for training. There was no reason for them to use the teleportation formation in the Weeping Moon City. "What's wrong with me?" Xiao Xinrui smiled bitterly and waved her hand, back to the Weeping Moon City. At this moment, behind Xiao Xinrui and the others, a figure flew quickly from the direction of the Weeping Moon City and came to their side in the blink of an eye. Who's this?" Xiao Xinrui scanned with her divine sense and found that the person was unfamiliar. She felt a little strange, but she didn't care and turned to fly away. Unexpectedly, when Xiao Xinrui flew less than 10 feet, she suddenly saw the cultivator, who was about 10 feet away from her, stop and give her a very strange smile. Oh no. Even if Xiao Xinrui didn't have much experience, she knew that this cultivator was coming for them. However, she didn't understand. This cultivator was only in the 11th layer of Qi refining. Why would he dare to attack her? Moreover, there were several 9th layer Qi refining disciples next to him. How can he be so bold? Xiao Xinrui was surprised, but she didn't dare to be negligent. She clapped her hands, and a dark green machete appeared in her hands. The scimitar was only half a foot long, and the blade was engraved with different runes. The small handle of the scimitar was held in Xiao Xinrui's hand. This was Xiao Xinrui's magic weapon, the crescent moon. Xiao Xinrui was alert, and so were the other disciples of the 100 Herbs Gate. They took out their yellow talismans and stood in front of Xiao Xinrui, scolding, "Where did this madman come from? What do you want?" "How, what can I do?" The cultivator laughed and said, "To take your lives." As he spoke, the cultivator was already less than 10 meters away from them. "Go." Everyone was furious. They activated their magic power, and the yellow talismans in their hands shot out. Xiao Xinrui also sneered. She waved her hand, and the crescent moon absorbed her magic power. A dark green light flashed in the air and streaked towards the cultivator. However, the cultivator didn't seem to panic when he saw the fireballs, water arrows, and other attacks. His face was full of mockery. In this mocking expression, the cultivator opened his mouth, and a green and red sword light shot out from his mouth. Flying sword talisman? Xiao Xinrui's heart relaxed. With her knowledge of Shang Huaming and the 100 Herbs Gate, she could only think of it as a flying sword talisman. But then, the green and red sword lights suddenly flashed, and 2 of them flew out. Then, with another 2 flashes, there were 8 of them. Xiao Xinrui couldn't help but turn pale with fright. An inconceivable feeling rose from the bottom of her heart. Flying swords? This was something she had accidentally heard a few days ago when Yu Tsong was showing off. She didn't expect to actually encounter it today. Now that she thought of the flying sword, Xiao Xinrui felt as if her heart had fallen into an ice cave. The 8 beams of sword light did not disappoint her. Right in front of her eyes, They cut through many yellow talismans as if they were pieces of yellow paper. At the same time, they pierced the throats of several disciples of the 100 Herbs sect at a speed faster than her crescent moon. These disciples did not fight back at all, and their protective brilliance was as useless as a piece of paper. Seeing the disciples fall into the air, Xiao Xianrui's eyes narrowed. She activated her magic power and once again waved her crescent moon. A ray of light that was much brighter than before drew an arc in the air and shot towards the cultivator. At this time, the cultivator opposite Xiao Xianrui seemed to have used up a lot of his magic power. He opened his mouth, and the flying sword disappeared into it. Then, the cultivator clapped his hand, and several yellow talismans appeared in his hand. As he activated his magic power, several fireball talismans flew towards Xiao Xianrui. Fortunately, seeing this, Xiao Xianrui's previously despaired heart gave birth to a glimmer of hope. This guy probably didn't use a flying sword, but something similar. Because the magic power used is too great, it can't last long. I am at the 12th layer of Qi refining. Facing a cultivator who has used up a lot of his magic power, I can win. Rumble! With a few loud sounds, the crescent moon's brilliance was blocked by the fireball talismans. Immediately it exploded, and a heat wave rushed towards them. What fireball talisman? How can it be more powerful than the best fireball talisman? Xiao Xianrui was stunned. She didn't dare to be negligent. She also slapped her storage bag and took out all kinds of defensive yellow talismans, regardless of whether they were defensive or offensive. With a shake of her hand, she threw them out, wanting to block Xiao Hua's fireball talismans. At the same time, her right hand continuously waved the scimitar, chopping out from different angles to block all directions, lest the cultivator take advantage of the chaos to attack in front of her. Her left hand was also forming a hand seal, preparing a suitable spell. Seeing the brilliance of the crescent moon, Xiao Xianrui's heart slightly calmed down. She knew that the enemy wouldn't attack for the time being. Then, she used her divine sense to search for an opening to escape. Although the opponent's cultivation was at the 10th layer of Qi refining, that strange sword light was too powerful. She knew that she wasn't a match for it. Now that the opponent's fireball talisman and other attacks were obviously to recover his magic power, if she didn't take the opportunity to escape now, when the sword light appeared again, it would be the time of her death. However, just as Xiao Xianrui was about to escape, a figure like a ghost floated and flashed through the brilliance that Xiao Xianrui had just hacked out. Often, it would bypass the brilliance that Xiao Xianrui had used all her strength to hack out, easily dodging the brilliance that Xiao Xianrui had used all her strength to hack out. Moreover, the cultivator's figure was very fast. In the blink of an eye, the distance between them was 20 feet. Which family did I provoke this fiend? Xiao Xianrui was shocked. She urged all the magic power in her body. The crescent moon in her hand flashed with a dark green brilliance, and a ray of light shot out from the scimitar. Xiao Xianrui knew that she couldn't escape. She turned around, shouted, and raised her scimitar to hack out. Chapter 1697. Xiao Xianrui's heart trembled with fear. She urged all the spiritual energy in her body and poured it into the crescent moon. The crescent moon suddenly turned into a dark green crescent moon. Xiao Xianrui's snow-white hand drew a line. The dark green brilliance was like a lover's charming glance, extremely accurate and extremely fast, shooting towards the cultivator who didn't have any magic weapon in his hand. Xiao Xianrui thought that even if this cultivator had a fireball more powerful than the best fireball talisman, this blade light would inevitably cut everything in front of it into two halves. That cultivator would absolutely not easily dodge it. Unfortunately, looking at the coldness in the cultivator's eyes and then looking at the cultivator's expressionless face, Xiao Xianrui's little bit of confidence that had just been born wavered again. Sure enough, just as Xiao Xianrui urged her cultivation method and tried her best to urge her spiritual energy, the cultivator suddenly stretched out his hand and took out a huge black hammer from nowhere. Then, as if it was light, he smashed it forward, directly facing the crescent moon. Demon weapon. Xiao Xinrui was shocked and almost blurted out, "You are a disciple of the heavenly demon sect." Just as Xiao Xinrui exclaimed, the demonic hammer had already touched the light of the crescent moon. Clang, a loud sound rang out. This sound was both sharp and loud. The black head of the demonic hammer was not damaged at all, but the dazzling dark green brilliance just now was like glass shattering, turning into little fluorescent lights, scattering in the air. Sure enough, it's a demonic weapon. Xiao Xinrui's mouth had a trace of bitterness. She clearly knew the difference between her magic weapon and a real demonic weapon. "I'm afraid I'm going to die." Xiao Xinrui despaired. Her eyes looked at the demonic hammer that seemed to have encountered no resistance and continued to rush towards her. Xiao Xinrui steeled her heart and waved the crescent moon again. Gotcha. The crescent moon was just a magic weapon, and it was a magic weapon of a refinement cultivator. How could Xiao Xinrui use her own body to attack the demonic weapon? With a crisp sound, the crescent moon suddenly shattered into several pieces. The fragments were like the broken shadow of the crescent moon in the rippling water, floating in the air. "Go to hell!" Xiao Xinrui heard the cultivator's ferocious roar, and the shadow of the demonic hammer in front of her grew larger and larger, covering her entire vision. An unparalleled force pressed down on her forehead, and within this force, there seemed to be a strange undulation. Mother! It was very strange. Under the shadow of death's shadow, Xiao Xinrui's first thought, but a vague image of a female cultivator that she had depicted countless times in her heart since childhood, but she had never succeeded in depicting a female cultivator's image. An unyielding, a kind of unwillingness spontaneously rose. Although this fluctuation was extremely faint and almost undetectable, what exactly was this fluctuation? Qi in the Qi in Qi instantly began to condense into Qi. Alas, I'm finally going to build my foundation. What a pity. Xiao Xinrui's heart flashed with a trace of joy, but as soon as the joy appeared, Xiao Xinrui felt a chill on her forehead. The demonic hammer had already touched her shiny skin. It's too late. Xiao Xinrui suddenly seemed to have understood. She slowly closed her eyes. However, after a few seconds, the sharp pain didn't come, and the force on her forehead also disappeared. Xiao Xinrui opened her eyes in shock and saw the strange cultivator standing not far away with a smile on his face. His voice was also strange. "Fellow Taoist Xiao, do you want to use the spirit accumulation talisman? Or do you want to build your foundation now?" Ah? Xiao Xinrui didn't understand the situation for a while. This change was really too fast. The cultivator frowned and urged, "Fellow Taoist Xiao, don't you want to take the foundation establishment pill or use the spirit accumulation talisman?" Spirit accumulation talisman? Xiao Xinrui was a little surprised. She quickly took out a foundation establishment pill from her storage bag and opened her mouth to take it. "Wait!" The cultivator shouted. Xiao Xinrui was so scared that her hand trembled, and the foundation establishment pill almost fell out of the air. At this time, she already knew that the other party must be a foundation establishment senior, or maybe even a golden core senior. "Don't resist," the cultivator said gently. Then he waved his hand, and a shiny talisman flew out from his hand and slowly floated to Xiao Xinrui's forehead. Talisman? Xiao Xinrui saw this and was even more sure of her guess. However, she was still nervous. She really didn't understand why this senior, who didn't know whether he was a foundation establishment senior or a golden core senior, didn't let her build her foundation. When the talisman disappeared on Xiao Xinrui's forehead, Xiao Xinrui suddenly found that her condensed true qi had stopped condensing. Of course, the condensed true qi didn't melt back into true qi. This is... Xiao Xinrui's face showed a trace of surprise. Poor child. The cultivator sighed. He waved his hand and a jade slip flew to Xiao Xinrui. He smiled and said, "Take a look." "Yes, this junior knows." Xiao Xinrui took the jade slip and read it with her spiritual sense. Her face changed and she murmured, "There is such a talisman in the world? The peak of qi refining. It's really incredible." Then she immediately bowed and saluted. This junior thanks senior for helping me. Please give me a name. This junior will never forget it. Alas, forget it. It's just a name. Don't mention it. The cultivator waved his sleeve and said sadly, hurry back to Weeping Moon City. Don't let a third person know about what happened today. Xiao Xianrui was suspicious. She gritted her teeth and said, yes, this junior swears that I will never tell a third person. However, if senior doesn't give me a name, this junior will never return to the city. What does it have to do with me whether you return or not? The cultivator sneered. He turned around and flew far away in a flash. Senior! Xiao Xianrui shouted. She also urged her spiritual power to chase after him. Unfortunately, her flying technique was not good. The true qi in her meridians had just condensed into true qi. How could she catch up with him? She only chased for 10 feet, but he had disappeared. Alas, which senior is this? Xiao Xianrui looked into the distance blankly and said to herself, if he has a relationship with my 100 Herbs Gate, how could he be so cruel and merciless and kill so many of my disciples? Oh, could it be that he is friends with Father? Xiao Xianrui's heart suddenly jumped. But there is a cultivator with such a cultivation. I have never heard Father mention him before. He can help people to build their foundation and give them the spiritual accumulation talisman. Such a powerful person. How could Father know him? Xiao Xianrui had a myriad of thoughts in her mind. She then helplessly landed on a mountain peak and replenished the true qi in her meridians. Only then did she fly up and head towards Weeping Moon City. After Xiao Xianrui flew away, a slender figure appeared on the mountain peak. It was Xiao Hua. Senior sister, I'm sorry for destroying your magic weapon. If there is a chance in the future, I will give you a magic weapon. Looking gently at the place where Xiao Xianrui disappeared, Xiao Hua said in a low voice, perhaps the next time we meet will be when I destroy the 100 Herbs Gate. At that time, senior sister won't have to bear the humiliation anymore. Then Xiao Hua also flew up. However, he flew very slowly, as if he was escorting Xiao Xianrui back to the city. Oh, by the way, Heavenly Demon Sect? What kind of sect is it? Is it a demonic cultivator? Xiao Hua thought doubtfully as he flew, why did senior sister say that when she saw me take out the demonic weapon? With Xiao Hua's escort, Xiao Xianrui naturally returned to Weeping Moon City safely. Xiao Hua was still worried. When Xiao Xianrui entered the teleportation formation of Weeping Moon City, he waved his hand and stopped a spirit camel carriage to return to the inn. When Xiao Hua returned to the inn, the full moon had already risen. Without waiting for him to enter the inn, Qian Diheng rushed out from the inn, grabbed Xiao Hua's arm, and scolded, Junior brother Xiao, where did you go? Why didn't you say anything when you went out? The auction was about to start, but I didn't see you. Then, without waiting for Xiao Hua's explanation, the three of them hurriedly got on the spirit camel carriage. Xiao Hua got on the spirit camel carriage and scanned with his divine sense. He saw that there was no sign of Fan Yi among the waiters in the inn. He couldn't help but feel a little regretful. I was thinking about covering my tracks and forgot. Fan Yi of this inn must have met Luan Jianming of Luan's shop. How could they not tell me in advance? It's really troublesome. However, he immediately felt relieved. Although my name has changed, it's understandable. Presumably, they won't think too much about it. As for my appearance, I'm not a female cultivator. I'm afraid those men will only talk about senior sister and Jiang Yan. How is it possible for you to recall my appearance? Looking at Jiang Yan's attitude towards senior sister, I know how senior sister endured humiliation in 100 Herbs Gate. Alas, my cultivation isn't enough to deal with 100 Herbs Gate. And now there's also 100 Flowers Valley. Xiao Hua clenched his teeth and thought again. Senior sister, when we meet again, it'll be the time when I save you from the fire pit. It'll also be the time when I destroy 100 Herbs Gate. Humph, if 100 Flowers Valley doesn't know what's good for them, I definitely won't be lenient. Senior sister, just bear with it for a few more years. Junior brother Xiao, where did you go? Sun Shu saw Xiao Hua pondering and asked quietly. Xiao Hua smiled and said, I didn't go anywhere. I just walked around Chiyu City and came across a refining shop. I bought some materials. Xiaohua took out some materials for Qian Diheng and the others to see. Hee, junior brother Xiao, you should put these things away. Qian Diheng was obviously not interested. Why did you buy these? Do you really want to make your own furnace? Although Swallow Thunder Ridge doesn't get along with Myriad Thunder Valley, refining magic tools is their responsibility. You only need to give them to Shocking Thunder Palace. You don't need to see them directly. I just thought it was interesting. It said that that place is cheap, so I thought about it. Alas, you can't delay business. Sun Shu said somewhat reproachfully, the auction has a time limit. If you're late, you won't be able to enter. Sorry, I know I was wrong. Xiaohua bowed. Chapter 1698. Listening to Sun Shu and Qian Diheng's complaints, Xiaohua could only smile bitterly. He just saw that he had plenty of time, so he went to Luan Ji's shop to buy some refining materials, preparing to refine it himself. He didn't think that it would take long. Who would have thought that he would meet Xiao Xianrui? He would not have thought that Xiao Xianrui was also at the peak of the 12th level of qi refining and was looking for the opportunity to build her foundation. Naturally, for Xiao Xianrui's foundation building, Xiaohua would not regret not going to the auction, not to mention that he tried to help Xiao Xianrui build her foundation and succeeded in one strike. The joy of being able to help his former senior sister had already made him throw aside the resentment of Qian Diheng and Qian Diheng. The spirit camel carriage traveled for the time it took to burn a stick of incense, and stopped in front of a rather large building. At this time, the night was getting darker, and the whole building, except for a few lights, was completely submerged in the night. At first glance, it looked like a terrifying giant beast. Oh, I'm afraid it's too late. Sun Shu frowned, looking at the cold courtyard of the tall building and whispered, "It's too late." Sun Shu and Qian Diheng were chatting, and Kun Fian, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said, "The auction may not have what we want. Tomorrow, let's go to EG or the shop to have a look." Qian Diheng looked at Kun Fian strangely and said, "Everything in the shop is normal. If you want to find something good, you can only find it in the auction." Fellow Taoists, the auction has already begun. Please return to your seats. Wait for the next auction in a month. Before the four people walked to the door, a city guard came out from the dark door. Seeing the four people's cultivation, he did not dare to neglect, and after bowing, he said respectfully, "Ah, fellow cultivator." Qian Diheng laughed, took a few steps forward, and affectionately held the other person's hand and said, "I am a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect, and I just came to Chiyu City. I have long admired the reputation of the auction in Chiyu City, so I hurriedly took the spirit camel carriage here. You see, didn't the spirit camel carriage just leave? Moreover, we are going to another place to gain experience tomorrow, so we need to participate in the auction. I'm afraid we won't be able to make it in a month. Fellow cultivator, please make an exception." With that said, Qian Diheng's other hand moved slightly, and a few spirit stones were quietly stuffed into the hands of the city guard. The city guard hesitated for a moment, then smiled and said, "So you're a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect. I have been disrespectful. Since they have come from afar and are in urgent need of training, it would be unethical of me to stop them. Fortunately, although the four of you are late, the magic treasures for today's finale have yet to arrive. The four of you are really lucky." As the guard spoke, he discreetly put away the spirit stone and moved to the side, leaving an empty space. "Thank you, fellow Taoist." Qian Diheng nodded with a smile. Without stopping, he hurried in. Xiaohua and the others also cupped their hands with a smile and followed in. Sun Shu walked past the city guard and said in a low voice, "A transcendent artifact actually appeared in the auction in Weeping Moon City? May I know what this magic treasure is?" When the city guard heard that, he was very proud and said with a smile, "Magic treasures often appear in our Weeping Moon City's auctions. Even the worst of them are high-grade magic tools. As for what kind of magic treasure will appear today, I also don't know. Fellow Taoists, please go inside and take a look." When the four of them entered, they found themselves in an extremely bright hall. This hall was not circular, but strangely polygonal. On each side of the hall, there were several small triangular doors. These small doors were overflowing with light, and there were also fluctuations of spiritual power. It was obvious that there was a restriction placed on them. Seniors, please hurry up and follow this junior into the auction hall. Seeing someone come in, the several children standing in the hall were slightly stunned. Immediately, 4 children came out from the crowd, walked in front of the 4 people, and said respectfully. Xiaohua followed a little girl to a small triangular door in the hall. That little girl said respectfully, "Senior, if you go through this small door, you will find a temporary magic array. Inside the magic array, you can't use your magic power. Senior can change the maze inside. After you go out of the magic array, you will find a corridor about 10 feet long. After you go through the corridor, you will arrive at the auction hall. Senior, please hurry up, these small doors are about to close." Xiaohua slightly turned his head. Sun Shu and the other 2 were not far from him. They were all standing at a small door, so he nodded and said, "I know. Thank you for your guidance." After saying that, he cupped his hands and stepped through the small door. Just as Xiaohua and the others stepped through the small door, several cultivators who looked like city guards of Chiyu City surrounded a cultivator wearing a mace. They hurriedly came in from outside the door. Although they couldn't see the cultivation level of that cultivator, there was actually a middle-stage foundation establishment cultivator among these city guards. That cultivator was very respectful to this maze cultivator. Presumably, this cultivator's cultivation level wasn't lower than the foundation establishment realm. The several people entered from a small door in the corner of the hall. None of the children in the hall went up to greet them, and there wasn't a trace of surprise on their faces. At this time, Xiaohua had already put on the maze, but after leaving the restriction, he found that the corridor wasn't empty. Instead, there was a 7th-layer qi refining cultivator quietly waiting there. When he saw Xiaohua come out, he went up and said with a smile, "Senior, is this your first time participating in Chiyu City's auction?" Xiaohua nodded and said yes. The cultivator took out 3 things from his storage bag. One was a jade slip, one was a token, and the last one was a stick. He handed it over and said with a smile, "This token is the number that Senior used to participate in today's auction. It was randomly arranged and didn't follow any order. Moreover, the number is only revealed after Senior has read the jade slip and injected your magic power into it. As for this competition wood, it is used by Senior during the auction. It is a set with this token." "It's so complicated?" Xiaohua was slightly surprised, but then he was happy. Only such a complicated method could prove the completeness of Chiyu City's auction and ensure the safety of the bidding cultivators. Naturally, it could make the participating cultivators feel relieved. After receiving the 3 things, Xiaohua immersed his divine sense into the jade slip. He roughly understood that the incantation was very simple, but it could be used. While walking through the corridor, Xiaohua imprinted the incantation on the token according to the instructions. Number 422. There was a flash of brilliance on Xiaohua's token, but the number didn't flash on the token. Hehe, as the jade slip said, only the holder of the token knows about this token. Others can't see it with their naked eyes or divine sense. More than 400 people, it's not much different from the number of cultivators participating in Yenyuan City's auction. Xiaohua thought to himself. He had already passed through the corridor. Xiaohua didn't have time to test the usage of the competition wood. He passed through the light screen at the end of the corridor and entered the auction hall. When he saw the situation inside the hall, he couldn't help but be stunned. Chapter 1699. What entered Xiaohua's eyes was a huge hall. In the middle of the hall was a transparent platform that was several feet high. The rest of the hall was filled with cultivators that were participating in the auction. It was a sea of black. Could it be that there were at least a few thousand people sitting there? Damn it! What? Are there so many cultivators? Xiaohua almost blurted out. He thought about his 422 number. Sure enough, it was given casually and there was no order to it. Just like the auction in Yenyuan City, The cultivators in the hall were all sitting on jade chairs. Some of these cultivators were wearing camouflage robes, some were wearing ordinary robes, and some were wearing strange cloaks. Although it was different from the camouflage robes, it was impossible to see their faces. Unlike the auction in Yenyuan City, the chairs in the hall seemed to have restrictions. When Xiaohua scanned them with his divine sense was actually bounced off the chairs. He couldn't see the cultivation of the cultivators sitting on the chairs. Seeing that there was an empty chair not far away, Xiaohua slowly walked over. As he walked, he looked around to see if there were any traces of Sun Shu and the others. What made Xiaohua happy was that he didn't see anyone's shadow at all. It seemed that there were some illusion arrays in the hall. Great! Xiaohua was very satisfied. He immediately sat on the chair and looked at the auction wood in his hand. This competition would seem to be made of jade, but it was extremely cold to the touch. It was far from the usual warmth of jade. Xiaohua poured his magic power into the competition wood. The competition wood was suffused with a light green brilliance, and a kind of spiritual power fluctuation flew out. However, this spiritual power only flew out of the range of the jade chair before disappearing into the space of the main hall. It didn't go far. Xiaohua knew that the auction hadn't started yet, so the auction wood couldn't be used. Simple numbers can be sent through the auction wood. Complex or other things can be sent through the auction wood. Not bad. Xiaohua lowered his head and carefully studied the auction wood's function. After all, it was his first time participating in the auction in Weeping Moon City, so he had to be careful. A short moment later, the light in the hall receded and a three-colored light screen appeared from the platform. It was like a school of fish swimming in the ocean as it danced around the hall. On the light screen, a mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator appeared. His figure gradually appeared on the platform like an image in a mirror. His figure would occasionally elongate and shrink as he gradually appeared on the platform. Fellow Taoists. The foundation establishment cultivator cupped his hands and said, "I am the host of this auction, Chang Fian. I am very happy that all of you are able to attend this auction on time. There are many things that all of you are looking forward to in this auction. I believe that all of you won't return empty-handed." Although Chang Fian was cupping his fists in a certain direction, every one of the cultivators within the hall could see that he was cupping his fists towards them. Additionally, Chang Fian's voice was faint. However, every one of the cultivators could hear him clearly. It was as though Chang Fian was whispering to them. After saying a few more words, Chang Fian clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Although I's words are pleasant to hear, they are still not as good as the items being auctioned. Everyone, I won't say any more. Let's begin the auction for today's first item." As he said that, he clapped his hands and a jade plate appeared out of thin air from a corner of the platform. The plate was covered with a brocade cloth, blocking everyone's sight and divine sense. Chang Fian waved his hand again and the plate flew in front of him and stopped in midair. Chang Fian took off the brocade cloth, revealing 3 jade bottles on the jade plate. These are the Peiyuan pill, marrow cleansing pill, and vitality assimilation pill used by qi refining cultivators. The Peiyuan pill is a set of 10, starting at 15 high-grade spirit stones. The marrow cleansing pill is a set of 20, starting at 10 high-grade spirit stones. The vitality assimilation pill is a set of 3, also starting at 10 high-grade spirit stones. However, after Chang Fian finished speaking, no one bid. For a moment, the entire hall was silent. Why is that? Could it be that the price of these medicinal pills is too high? Xiaohua was somewhat baffled. However, at this moment, Chang Fian waved his big sleeve and a disc-like magic tool flew into the air. A white brilliance shot out from the disc and condensed into a light screen in midair. On the light screen, a string of words kept jumping. Xiaohua's gaze swept over it and understood that it was the number and the number of spirit stones being auctioned. Sure enough, he heard Chang Fian say with a smile, "All right, the 97th cultivator has bid. If there are no higher bids, I'll rule that the 97th cultivator wins." Of course, above the light screen was the number 97th and another number. Xiaohua thought for a moment. Magic power surged in his hand and he waved the competition wood slightly. Sure enough, Chang Fian immediately said, "All right, fellow Taoist number 422 has bid. Ha, this fellow Taoist really has good eyesight." This bottle of medicinal pills was refined by a famous alchemist in the Hundred Flowers Valley. Its medicinal power is far superior to other medicinal pills. As soon as Chang Fian finished speaking, many cultivators in the hall became restless. Not only did their voices rise and fall, but their hands were also not idle. They all began to wave the competition wood and raise the price of the medicinal pills again and again. This senior really knows how to bid. He raised the price of the medicinal pills by a lot with just one sentence. Xiaohua stopped after testing the effects of the competition wood and sneered in his heart. Afterwards, there were also some medicinal pills for aura refining cultivators, foundation building cultivators, and even a few for golden core cultivators. All of them were won by unknown cultivators through bidding. All right, fellow Taoists, the ordinary medicinal pills are finished. Next are some medicinal pills with special effects. Chang Fian mysteriously smiled. He pointed at the jade bottle and said, "This is the revolving illumination pill. It is refined from the rainbow cloud." There is no need for this poor Taoist to explain. Everyone already knows that this is a supreme item that can stimulate divine sense. This revolving illumination pill, as well as other medicinal pills with special effects, has no starting price. Fellow Taoists, please start bidding. Revolving illumination pill. Not to mention the others, even Xiaohua was surprised. The rainbow cloud was not easy to find. Every time a rainbow cloud appeared, it was accompanied by the life of a cultivator. Although Xiaohua's space was mystical, it only had one rainbow cloud. However, Xiaohua himself was also puzzled. He didn't understand why after he picked the rainbow cloud, he was able to produce a second one. There were many cultivators bidding for the revolving illumination pill. Xiaohua saw many cultivators around him repeatedly waving their hands. Finally, the price of the revolving illumination pill was raised to 20 top-grade spirit stones. It was actually twice the price of an ordinary foundation establishment pill. Damn, they're crazy. Xiaohua curled his lips. But thinking about the powerful effects of divine sense, he felt that it was normal. After all, foundation establishment pills were easy to refine, but rainbow clouds were not common. Afterwards, special medicinal pills such as embryonic breathing pill, illumination pill, Elaine pill, and essence flower pill appeared one by one. Each medicinal pill caused a sensation. When essence flower pill appeared, Xiaohua madly bid several times. But in the end, he couldn't resist the impulse of others. He sighed and gave up. After all, young master's situation is different from others. 1 or 2 medicinal pills may not be enough. If I only bid for the essence flower pill, I'm afraid I'm neglecting the essentials. Let's look at the spirit grass used to refine the essence flower pill. Xiaohua helplessly thought. Moreover, unlike other medicinal pills, the final bidding price of the Elaine pill, which was hard to find elsewhere, was not too high. Presumably, it was because the Elaine green fruit and other medicinal pills were commonly seen in Weeping Moon City, so Xiaohua also had the idea of bidding for the spirit grass. Xiaohua's space had many spirit grasses. They were all carefully collected and planted by Xiaohua, so they could be considered complete. But human strength couldn't compare to heavenly strength. On the Xiaoyu continent, there were countless types of spirit grasses. How could Xiaohua collect them all? Bright flower fruit, essence returning grass, Elaine green fruit, and danhe, these 4 spirit grasses, Xiaohua's space didn't have them. Moreover, Xiaohua still had a problem, and that was the bright flower pill's pill recipe. Although Xiaohua had obtained Jinxie's jade slip and there were some pill recipes in it, these pill recipes were all common. Bright flower pill and other special pill recipes were still rare. Although Xiaohua could gather the spirit grasses and spirit fruits, if he wanted to refine the bright flower pill, he would have to think of another way. After that, there were some rare medicinal pills. Some could increase divine sense, some could improve the quality of the condensed core, some could refine the body. Every medicinal pill had a high price. Xiaohua had heard of these medicinal pills before, but he didn't expect that he would come across them right after he came out for training. Unfortunately, although he had spirit stones in his space, they didn't seem to be of any use to him. He could only listen to Chang Fian's words on the stage. Xiao Hua didn't have any thoughts of bidding. All right, the bidding for the medicinal pills is over. Now, let's start the bidding for the spirit grasses and spirit fruits. Chang Fian finally shouted. Xiao Hua immediately focused. As usual, the first round of the auction for the spirit grasses is my Weeping Moon City's specialty, the Yi Lian green fruit. Chang Fian clapped his hands, and a young female cultivator walked out from the corner. This female cultivator used a strange head ornament to cover her face, making it impossible to see her true appearance. She wore very little, and only a few important parts were covered. The rest of her tender skin was exposed, and under the resplendent brilliance, it revealed a kind of enchanting luster. Xiao Hua's eyes swept over her, and a wave of heat gushed out from the bottom of his heart. Damn it! Xiao Hua immediately recited the exquisite leaf scripture. A faint flow of energy flowed out from the Buddha's saraira. Although it was like a faint autumn wind, it blew away all the beautiful thoughts in Xiao Hua's heart. Should I bid for the spirit grasses? Or should I bid for the body? Xiao Hua cried out in his heart. He looked around. Obviously, the entire atmosphere in the hall was ignited by this female cultivator in an instant. There was a somewhat excited atmosphere. Fellow Taoists, I believe everyone knows that the specialty of Weeping Moon City is the Yi Lian green fruit. However, the quality and age of the Yi Lian green fruit are different. If the difference is too big, then the effects of the clear flower pill and the Yi Lian pill will also be different. As for the Yi Lian green fruit in this auction in my Weeping Moon City, let's not talk about the age. As for the quality, everyone, please take a look. The 100 stalks of Yi Lian green fruit in this female cultivator's storage bag were cultivated by this female cultivator using my Weeping Moon City's secret method. The quality is definitely the best. Chapter 1700. Using primordial yin to cultivate it? Xiao Hua was stunned and thought to himself, it seems that I haven't seen any records that mention such benefits. I believe that some of you are here for the first time in my Weeping Moon City. I still have to explain. Chang Fian continued naturally, as if he had said this countless times. The refinement of pills requires the balance of yin and yang. The bright flower fruit is yang while the Yi Lian green fruit is yin. Because of the power of heaven and earth, my Weeping Moon City is a place where yang energy gathers. The yin energy of heaven and earth has nowhere to go. Therefore, the yin spirit herbs produced here are famous in the entire Xiaoyu continent. The Yi Lian green fruit cultivated with female primordial yin has an even deeper yin energy. It is extremely rare in Weeping Moon City. If it is refined into the bright flower pill, its effect will be 30% stronger than normal pills. The starting price of these 100 Yi Lian green fruits is 20 high-grade spirit stones. Why is it so cheap? This is bad. When Xiao Hua heard that the Yi Lian green fruit cultivated with female primordial yin had so many benefits and the starting price was so low, he couldn't help but feel bad. He thought that there would be many people bidding for it. Who knew that after a while, the light screen was still silent and no words appeared. Cough cough, Chang Fian coughed a few times and smiled. I know that the age of the Yi Lian green fruit is a bit young. But if you buy it and choose a suitable place to cultivate it, fellow Chang, let's forget about it. I'm afraid there aren't any cultivators from the 100 Flower Valley, Mo Ling sect, or Grass Spirit sect here today. No one is interested in your Yi Lian green fruit. Fellow Taoist, please bring out your aged spirit herbs. Finally, a slightly boorish voice rang out, reverberating through the silent hall. Hee, that's right. Everyone also shouted. Sigh, all right. Chang Fian seemed to feel that it was like casting pearls before swine. He shook his head slightly and was about to put away the jade box with a wave of his sleeve. Great! Xiao Hua was overjoyed in his heart. He understood that these spirit grasses that were not very old were of little value to ordinary cultivators. The base price of 120-year-old spirit grasses was 20 high-grade spirit stones, and each of them was 20 medium-grade spirit stones. This price was absolutely not low. Only sects like 100 Herb sect that specialized in growing spirit herbs would pay attention to it and pay such a high price. But these sects really didn't come today. Without hesitation, Xiao Hua waved the wooden stick in his hand, and a line of words appeared on the screen. Number 422, 20 pieces. The 100 Flowers Valley is here. I wasted my breath. The cultivator's voice rang out again. Well, there's finally an expert who knows what's what. Chang Fian smiled again and said, fellow Taoist number 422 has given the starting price. Are there any other Taoists who want to bid? If you wanted to bid, you would have done so long ago. Xiao Hua muttered. Sure enough, after a few mutters, no one responded. The 100 stalks of Elysian lotus azure fruits in the bag of holding belonged to Xiao Hua. However, Xiao Hua also noticed that the auction in the Weeping Moon City was different from that in the Yanyan City. All the items that were auctioned would not be delivered to the cultivators at the time of the auction. Presumably, the items would only be delivered to the cultivators after the auction. What if I don't have enough spirit stones and scare them into bidding? What if I can't take out enough spirit stones and sneak away? Xiao Hua thought maliciously. Following that, a few more spirit herbs, just like the Elysian lotus azure fruits, were brought up by different female cultivators. They were not very old, but their origins were not ordinary. Presumably, these items would have a good selling point in the previous auctions, so they became the norm. The asking price was not low, but today, they all benefited Xiao Hua. In the end, a few people laughed and said, fellow Taoist Chang, I'm afraid there's no need to bid for these routine spirit herbs. Let fellow Taoist number 422 take them. It's not very appropriate to waste our time for no reason. I also think so. Chang Fian did not expect that today's situation would be like this. His face was slightly embarrassed. While he was cursing inwardly, he rolled his eyes and said with a smile, if fellow Taoist number 422 agrees, I will make the decision to bid for all the low-level spirit herbs to fellow Taoist number 422. Furthermore, I will give fellow Taoist number 422 a 5% discount. Xiao Hua laughed loudly in his belly. Without the slightest hesitation, he once again agreed via voice transmission. Fellow Taoist number 422 is really funny. Seeing a line of small words on the light screen, fellow Taoist number 422 agrees. Chang Fian and the other cultivators in the hall all laughed loudly. All right, since fellow Taoist number 422 is so supportive, I can't go back on my words. Chang Fian clapped his hands and said with a smile, for this auction, the Sobbing Moon City has prepared 440 types of spiritual herbs. Other than the 5 spiritual herbs that fellow Taoist number 422 bid for, there are still 435 types of spiritual herbs left. They will be priced at 8,700 upper-grade spiritual stones. I will remove 10% of the spiritual stones and fellow Taoist number 422 can bid for these spiritual herbs with 8 supreme-grade spiritual stones. As he said that, he pointed his hand. On the light screen, lines of words flowed and the 435 types of spirit herbs were slowly displayed. Bright flower fruit, origin returning herb, mu ning herb, chi chi mu. Some of the cultivators who were bored actually read out the names one by one. At the same time, many cultivators roared with laughter. Although there were a lot of spirit herbs and they could be considered rare, their age was written next to them. Some were 10 years old, some were 20 years old, and the oldest was 30 years old. These were probably not enough to be refined into pills, or they could not be refined into pills of high quality. Pill closing. Among the lines of words, a sharp-eyed cultivator immediately exclaimed, fellow Taoist Chang, why is there a pill closing among these low-grade spirit herbs? This pill closing is the item that I want to bid for. No, I want to bid for it. Fellow Taoist, this pill closing is naturally a low-grade spirit herb that is extremely young, right? Can't you see? Chang Fian's eyes flashed with craftiness. He pointed his hand and the words on the light screen stopped. After the words pill closing, there were words, 5 years, 10 spirit herbs. But the problem is, this pill closing is not limited to its age. It only needs 5 years of pill closing to refine bright flower pills. The other cultivators also shouted, moreover, this pill closing is extremely rare. Weeping Moon City is taking out 10 pill closing at once. Each pill closing should be worth at least half a top-grade spirit stone, right? Why are they giving it to Cultivator 422 just like that? That's right. No, this is not fair. This pill closing is a separate auction. Everyone shouted. Cough, cough. Chang Fian coughed and sneered. I represent Weeping Moon City. How can the words of Weeping Moon City not count? Fellow Taoists, I gave you this opportunity. Since you don't want it, how can you blame I for being unfair? Chapter 1701. When the majority of the cultivators heard this, they were somewhat dissatisfied. However, when they thought about it carefully, the situation was indeed the same. Chang Fian had originally bid for the items one by one. However, someone in the auction house thought that it was too slow. Thus, they urged him to speed up. Chang Fian also agreed without hesitation. Number 422 didn't hesitate and took out 8 top-grade spirit stones without hesitation. Now that they were tracing back and asking people to relent, there were naturally people who wanted to make things difficult for Chang Fian. But how can there be 450 types of spiritual herbs in a single auction? At the same time, there were many people who were surprised and muttered, and as usual, Dan he should be bidding alone. However, when Chang Fian's cold gaze swept over them, the whole place became calm again, and no one said a word. All right, Chang Fian was very satisfied with the effect of his gaze. Suddenly, he clapped his hands and said with a smile, fellow cultivators, don't be afraid. For this auction, my Sobbing Moon City has prepared many spiritual herbs. Soon, there will be a 400-year-old Lian green fruit, and the starting price will be 1 top-grade spirit stone. All right, I will add 5 mid-grade spirit stones. Before Chang Fian finished speaking, a cultivator shouted, Ha! The others laughed again, because when this cultivator spoke, a few words had already jumped on the light screen. Number 105 had already raised the price to 1 top-grade spirit stone and 20 mid-grade spirit stones. Damn it. That cultivator touched his head and did not say anything else. He hurriedly activated his magic power and waved the wood. Hee. Seeing that the Lian green fruit was quickly sold for 2.5 high-grade spirit stones, Xiaohua felt a burst of joy in his heart. To me, 30 years and 300 years are really negligible. With only 8 top-grade spirit stones, I was able to bid for so many spiritual herbs. I didn't come to the auction in vain. Next, there were Lian green fruits of different ages, and finally, there was a 1,300-year-old Lian green fruit. This completely caused the entire auction to boil over. After several rounds of bidding, the words on the light screen changed rapidly, and in the end, it was actually sold at the price of 2 top-grade spirit stones. Although Xiaohua had already participated in the auction, he was still somewhat flabbergasted as he watched the numbers on the hologram gradually increase. He thought to himself, it seems that when it comes to the auction, these spirit stones are no longer considered spirit stones. This is a top-grade spirit stone. In the normal market, a 2,000-year-old spiritual herb is only worth 1 top-grade spirit stone, but in the auction, it seems like it's worth twice the price. It seems that I still don't have enough spirit stones in my space. Xiaohua unconsciously thought of the finale of the auction. I wonder how many spirit stones that treasure is worth? After that, there were some spirit grasses. Most of these spirit grasses didn't exist in Xiaohua's space, but from their names, most of them were included in the spirit grasses that Xiaohua had just bid for. Without exception, these spirit grasses were all sold for extremely high prices. Well, if the last treasure is exchanged with a 10,000-year-old spiritual herb, I don't know if it's possible. Xiaohua's heart was rekindled with hope. After the auction of spiritual herbs, it was the materials for refining tools. There were also many rare and strange things, such as half a drop of Qingfu blood, which was said to be used to practice some kind of mysterious cultivation method, several pieces of spiritual wood, which was said to be used to refine flying swords, and a bottle of heavenly thunder accumulation liquid, which was said to be necessary to refine a thunder attribute magic weapon. These things might not be available in the Weeping Moon City, so the things to be exchanged were also strange, many of which Xiaohua had never heard of. Just when Xiaohua was secretly shaking his head and thinking about how to get the spiritual herbs in the auction, he heard Chang Fian's clear voice. "These are 2 pieces of gold foil that a fellow Taoist entrusted to me in the Weeping Moon City. I don't know the purpose of these 2 pieces of gold foil." "Gold foil?" Xiaohua was startled and hurriedly looked up. Sure enough, the 2 pieces of gold foil floating in front of Chang Fian looked exactly the same as the gold foil that recorded the exquisite leaf scripture. "I don't know the material and purpose of this gold foil, the fellow Taoist who entrusted it also doesn't know, but I believe that this thing is of great use." Chang Fian said very mysteriously, "This fellow Taoist doesn't want spiritual stones or spiritual herbs, he only wants Qian Mo stone. No matter how big or small it is, it can be exchanged." Qian Mo stone? When Xiaohua heard this, he felt both disappointed and uneasy. This gold leaf was related to the Buddha Saraira that he cultivated, so he had to gather all of it. Now that his luck was good, how could he not take it when he encountered it in the second auction? He was willing to exchange the 10,000-year-old spiritual herb, but the other party only wanted the Qian Mo stone. Xiaohua also knew about the Qian Mo stone. It was something similar to the Danhe. When refining tools, one only needed to add a little bit of it, and no matter if it was a magic tool or magic weapon, it would be 2 times harder than when it was not used. It was not rare to say that it was rare, but the problem was that Xiaohua had never seen it before, let alone have it. Could it be that I'm just going to watch it be exchanged by someone else? Xiaohua was a bit anxious, but the situation was out of Xiaohua's expectations. That Chang Fian shouted a few times, but just like the Yilian green fruit, no one answered. Xiaohua was overjoyed. His eyes turned a few times, and he activated the auction wood. On the light screen immediately appeared, number 422, a piece of top-grade spiritual stone or a 10,000-year-old spiritual herb. Haha, this fellow Taoist is probably a cultivator from Hundred Flower Valley or Grass Spirit Sect. When a cultivator saw this, he laughed and said, "Who would exchange spiritual herbs for some gold foil of unknown use?" Chang Fian looked at it, then pointed his hand. Xiaohua's line of text immediately disappeared. He said, "That fellow Taoist said very clearly he only wants the Qian Mo stone and nothing else." "Fellow Taoist Chang." A low voice sounded, "I have the Qian Mo stone, but I don't want this gold foil. I want to exchange it for a 10,000-year-old Yilian grass. I don't know." Chang Fian shook his head slightly and said with a smile, "I can't do anything about this. If fellow Taoist is willing, you can reveal your identity, then use the Qian Mo stone to exchange for these 2 gold foils. After that, you can exchange it with fellow Taoist number 422 outside. Or you can ask fellow Taoist number 422 to reveal his identity, and you can go find him." Naturally, that voice stopped and did not say another word. Xiaohua also sighed. Even though the gold foil was important, but if he revealed his identity, then the 10,000-year-old Yilian grass would not be easy to explain. Sun Shu, Qian Diheng, and Kun Fian were all present. Damn it. Xiaohua suddenly stood up and pulled down the maze on his body, revealing a pale face with thick eyebrows and big eyes. He said clearly, "I, Jianghu, happen to have a 10,000-year-old Yilian grass on me. If fellow Taoist is willing, you can exchange these gold foils. I will respectfully wait for fellow Taoist outside." Seeing Xiaohua reveal his identity, the people present whispered to each other. A 10,000-year-old Yilian grass, that was a spiritual grass needed by late-stage foundation establishment cultivators. He actually used it to exchange for the Qian Mo stone. Could it be that these 2 gold foils had some secret? But what made Xiaohua disappointed was that the cultivator who spoke just now did not speak again, and he also could not figure out who it was. Looking at the eyes of the surrounding people looking at him, Xiaohua felt rather ashamed and angry in his heart, as if he had been played by that person. "All right, fellow Taoist Jiang, please sit down." Chang Fian waved his hand and said, 9 out of 10 things in this world do not go as you wish. Even though these gold foils are something you must obtain, you do not have the Qian Mo stone, and this fellow Taoist obviously has his misgivings. It's better to ask fellow Taoist Jiang to find another opportunity in the future. As he said that, he waved his hand, and the 2 gold foils landed on an empty plate in midair, falling into a corner and disappearing. Sigh. Xiaohua sighed and sat down, simply not wearing his camouflage robe anymore. Immediately after, Chang Fian took out many more items, bidding one by one. Xiaohua lost interest, only watching indifferently. In the end, after bidding for several mystic tools, Chang Fian waved his hand and said with a smile, "The finale of this auction is a special item." "Fellow Taoist Chang, isn't it a magic weapon?" An impatient cultivator already shouted. This item is not a magic weapon, but it's better than a magic weapon." Chang Fian smiled and clapped his hand. A similarly charming female cultivator with her face covered, holding a jade plate in her hand, walked up to the high platform. When the female cultivator walked in front of Chang Fian under everyone's anxious mood, Chang Fian took the jade plate and said with a smile, "I wonder if fellow Taoists have guessed what it is?" Seeing Chang Fian showing off, everyone shook their heads. There were indeed too many strange things in Xiaoyu continent. Who could know what was under this brocade? Everyone, please take a look. Chang Fian waved his hand and the brocade floated up. On the jade plate, there was a small, clear, azure sword quietly lying on it. It looked extremely ordinary. A flying sword? Seeing this item, some cultivators revealed expressions of joy while others frowned. Not bad, fellow Taoists are indeed considerate. This is a flying sword. Chang Fian waved his hand and the azure flying sword flew into his hand. He looked at the small sword in his hand with pity and waved his hand. The flying sword flew into the air and freely swam around the high platform. This is a real flying sword, something that sword cultivators use. Chang Fian used the art of controlling objects for a moment and said with satisfaction, "Although I don't know the art of flying swords, I can sense the sharpness and spirituality of this flying sword just by using the Dharma instrument's method to activate it. If any fellow Taoist is proficient in flying sword techniques and lacks a flying sword, wouldn't this spirituality of a flying sword be even better than a magic treasure?" A spirituality of a flying sword. Xiaohua's heart jumped and he immediately understood what Chang Fian meant. This flying sword clearly had a sword spirit. It was many times stronger than his dream execution. How many spirit stones would this cost? Xiaohua frowned and began to calculate how he could bid for this flying sword. Fellow Taoist Chang, a sword cultivator's flying sword is connected to the sword cultivator's life. If the previous owner of this flying sword did not die, it would not be easy to refine, right? Fellow Taoist Chang, I heard that 2 sword cultivators from Huan country went missing in Meng country. Could this flying sword be related to those 2 sword cultivators? Fellow Taoist Chang. A group of cultivators began to ask. Chapter 1702. Fellow Taoists. Chang Fian clapped his hands and said in a clear voice, "Although flying swords are rarely seen in my Tao Sec's auction, it's not like they have never been seen before. Of course, with Ai's experience, this is also the first time I've seen a flying sword of such high quality. Therefore, when my Sobbing Moon City said that we have something comparable to a magic weapon for auction, I've indeed caused you to misunderstand." Fellow Taoist Chang. There was still someone who said loudly, "All magic tools and magic treasures either have a common refining method, or a special refining method is provided during the bidding. This flying sword is certainly good, but I'm afraid we don't have a sword cultivator's magic formula." Chang Fian was somewhat unhappy that he was interrupted, but he still narrowed his eyes and said, "Fellow Taoist, please rest assured. I haven't finished speaking yet. This flying sword has already been restricted by a secret method and there is a corresponding refining jade slip. Great. Xiaohua's mouth revealed a slight smile. This flying sword was simply tailor-made for him. I just don't know how to bid. Xiaohua's heartbeat quickened. Sure enough, someone shouted, "Fellow Taoist Chong, what's the starting price of this flying sword? Hurry up and report it, we can't wait any longer." Everyone, please wait a moment. As Chang Fian spoke, he stretched out his hand and was about to point at the light screen. However, at this moment, Chang Fian suddenly felt the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in front of him move slightly. At the same time, the flying sword that had stopped in front of him suddenly straightened its sword head. As if it had intelligence, it swayed slightly and suddenly flew towards the crowd of cultivators in front of him. Who? Chang Fian was slightly surprised, but his expression didn't seem to be too surprised. Chang Fian pointed his finger and the flying sword stopped in midair like a small snake that had its weak point pointed. However, this pause only lasted for a moment. Suddenly, the flying sword more than doubled in size. With a schwa sound, it turned into a green rainbow and was about to fly into the crowd of cultivators. Just as the flying sword was about to cross the range of the high platform, there was a burst of light and a finger-wide yellow light screen blocked the flying sword. The flying sword was blocked by the flickering light of the light screen and the intelligence of the flying sword seemed to be sucked away. With a clang sound, the flying sword fell onto the high platform. A bunch of hypocrites. Suddenly, a shout came from the crowd of cultivators. Shortly after, a school of light that looked like a school of fish rose up from the shout and charged toward the light barrier. There was a burst of crackling sounds. The restriction on the platform was clearly no match for the light from the fish and was shattered. Shortly after, another ray of rainbow shot out from where the fish flew out and landed on the green flying sword. The green flying sword seemed like it was being held by a hand and was about to leave the platform as the rainbow shrank. Flying sword! Xiaohua's eyes were sharp, and he had also practiced with flying swords. With a glance, he could tell that these two strange and sharp lights were two flying swords. Chang Fian's eyes flashed with a hint of gloominess. He formed a series of hand seals and struck at the two flying swords. However, all the hand seals were useless. It seemed that they could not prevent the flying swords from being taken away. However, Chang Fian did not look nervous at all. Where did this madman come from? A light snort came from the top of the high platform. Immediately, a green full moon-shaped ball of light flashed from where the sound came from. The ball of light streaked across the high platform and smashed into the rainbow sword. There was a crisp pa sound, followed by a sword cry from Ning Weng. The rainbow sword seemed to be in pain and cried out sadly. The green flying sword naturally fell again. Go! 2 people flew out from the crowd of cultivators. These 2 people had already torn off their camouflage clothing, revealing the foreign sword cultivator attire. They were Duan Yuming and Wang Shuyao who came to the 3 cultivation countries to find Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yuhe. When Duan Yuming saw that Wang Shuyao's rainbow sword was hit, he was not nervous at all. He chanted a mantra and the swimming fish sword flew out. One of them hit the green ball of light and the other went to catch the green flying sword. Ignorant child! With a sneer, the green ball of light flickered and suddenly exploded. In the space of 1 zhang above the high platform, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was torn apart. Wang Shuyao's rainbow sword shook violently. Then, it turned into a rainbow and returned to Wang Shuyao's side. With a spin, it protected Wang Shuyao within the rainbow. Duan Yuming's swimming fish sword was even more miserable. Both of the fishes were blown away. It was extremely chaotic. Even the fishes that were transformed from the sword light suddenly disappeared, leaving only empty outlines. Duan Yuming, who was flying in the air, paled. He knew that he had encountered an expert. He activated the sword energy in his body and slowly withdrew his swimming fish sword. He then bowed and said, "I wonder which senior from the Weeping Moon City has come?" From the time the 2 sword cultivators from the Xian sword sect attacked to the expert from the Weeping Moon City stopping them, only a few breaths of time had passed. In the auction, the cultivators' cultivation levels were uneven. Many of the qi refining cultivators did not even have time to react before everything was over. Although the exploding ball of light was extremely powerful, its power was controlled within one zhang. Even under the ball of light, the 10 cultivators on the side of the high platform did not even have a single strand of hair on their heads. Of course, among these 10 cultivators, there were 2 low-level qi refining cultivators. Although they were wearing camouflage robes, their faces were already pale. They thought that they had just walked through the gates of hell. Senior. Seeing that the 2 sword cultivators from the Xian sword sect had such a high cultivation level, they were afraid that they were already in the golden core stage. Naturally, the cultivators who called them seniors were also in the nascent soul stage. Many of the cultivators who had regained their senses during the auction thought, could it be Fairy Chiue? However, Chang Fian was unusually respectful. He bowed towards the high platform and said, "Junior greets Elder Hua." "Elder Hua?" A cultivator beside Xiao Hua whispered, "Elder Hua Jianghu? It's actually not Fairy Chiue?" Elder Hua is already in the late stage of the golden core stage. It's more than enough to deal with these 2 sword cultivators. How could the Chiue city lord appear? It was probably because the restrictions on the high platform were damaged. The restrictions on the seats during the auction were also damaged. Everyone's whispers could be heard clearly now. Seeing an old woman in green slowly stepping down from the high platform, Duan Yuming's eyes flickered. He bowed and said, "Junior Duan Yuming greets Elder Hua of the Chiue city." Although Hua Jianyu did not release her qi, her aura was oppressive. With Xiao Hua's cultivation level, he could not see her cultivation level for the time being. However, the late stage of the golden core stage was even more powerful than Zhen Qing. Xiao Hua could not help but respect her. "You are sword cultivators from the Huan country. You came to my Chiue city to participate in the auction. Why did you break my rules? Although you are guests from afar, I still have to warn you." Hua Jinyu landed from the sky and looked at Duan Yuming and Wang Shuyao expressionlessly. Chapter 1703. I'm Duan Yuming, this is my junior sister, Wang Shuyao. Duan Yuming bowed and said, "I was reckless just now, please forgive me, Senior Hua." Hua Jianyu's eyes flickered. She did not expect the 2 sword cultivators to be so humble. She nodded slightly and said, "Yes, I'm the elder of Chiue City, Hua Jianyu. Although the realm of sword cultivators is different from that of Dao sect, your cultivation is similar to that of Dao sect's middle golden core stage. You don't have to call me senior, just call me fellow cultivator." "Thank you, fellow cultivator Hua." Duan Yuming understood that Hua Jianyu's cultivation level was very high. He already knew that Hua Jinyu had reached the Aurus core realm when he tried to probe Hua Jinyu. Once he broke through the bottleneck, he would be a nascent soul senior. "Alright, since both of you know your mistake, Chiue City has always been hospitable. You just have to follow the rules of the auction. I'll pretend that I didn't see anything that happened just now." Hua Jinyu nodded and said, "Do you think it's that easy?" Xiao Hua, who was at the back of the crowd, narrowed his eyes. He had already thought about the cause and effect and said coldly in his heart. Sure enough, Duan Yuming laughed and said, "We naturally want to follow the rules of Chiue City, but we also want to follow the rules of the 3 cultivation kingdoms. But there's nothing we can do. Someone tried to kill my sword cultivator, so I have to violate the rules of Chiue City." "What do you mean by that?" Hua Jianyu sneered. "I know that you've been looking for 2 sword cultivators for many years without any results. Are you suspecting that these 2 sword cultivators are from Chiue City?" Wang Shuyao also said coldly, "We didn't say that. If fellow cultivator Hua admits it yourself, we can also think so." "Junior sister," Duan Yuming scolded, "if Chiue City did it, would fellow cultivator Hua treat us so kindly? They dare." Wang Shuyao glanced at them and said coldly, "Why wouldn't I dare?" The moment Hua Jinyu released his pressure, it was as if a mountain was pressing down on them. Wang Shuyao and Duan Yuming's expressions changed instantly. After their bodies sank down by 3 feet, there was the sound of swords ringing around their bodies. The flying swords circled around the two of them rapidly. The sword ray shot out fiercely and actually managed to resist the pressure of a late-stage Aurus core. Although Hua Jinyu controlled his aura very well, all the cultivators present could still feel it. Even Xiao Hua, who was the last, felt an incomparable fear from the bottom of his heart. It was like an irresistible pressure. When Xiao Hua saw Wang Shuyao and Duan Yuming's methods of dealing with them, his eyes unconsciously lit up. His current strength was roughly at the early stage of Foundation establishment, but if he were to fight with a Foundation establishment cultivator, he would be lacking in coercion. And this coercion was very annoying. Without the realm of Foundation establishment, it simply wouldn't be produced. If he could use his flying sword to resist the coercion of a Foundation establishment cultivator, he wouldn't need to reveal his mighty Vajra Dharma body. This would be an excellent method. But right after, Xiao Hua frowned slightly again and said to himself, using the flying sword to resist the pressure, it's probably because of the sword spirit within the flying sword. This young master's flying sword doesn't have a sword spirit, so how can it be used? It's better to find an opportunity to try it out. Fellow Taoist Hua, don't be anxious. I have something to say. Duan Yuming saw that Hua Jinyu's coercion was blocked. He raised his head and shouted. Hua Jinyu snorted coldly and retracted his coercion. Fellow Taoist Hua, don't you think that my actions have something to do with this flying sword? Duan Yuming glanced at the flying sword in Chang Fian's hand and said, this flying sword is one of the 2 missing sword cultivators of my Xian sword sect, Zhang Yutong's flying sword, Green Spirit. Is it? Hua Jinyu glanced at Duan Yuming, and with a wave of her hand, the Green Spirit flying sword flew into her hand. She looked at it for a while and said, this flying sword's material is indeed extraordinary. It's different from ordinary flying swords. But if you say that this is Zhang Yutong's flying sword, we'll need you to show evidence. This Green Spirit flying sword was nurtured by my Xian sword sect's secret technique. Although I can't completely control the sword, I can still use my sect's secret technique to drive the sword. Wang Shuyao said, the fact that I was able to take down this sword is the evidence. Is that so? Hua Jinyu smiled. Then she clasped her hands together, and the Green Spirit flying sword in her hand flickered, and there seemed to be a cracking sound. Fellow Taoist Hua, please wait. Duan Yuming's expression changed, and he hurriedly shouted, if you use your technique, this Green Spirit flying sword will be subdued, but the information of my sect's disciple will also be lost. I'm afraid that it will be detrimental to the search for the missing disciple. Since I can subdue it, does that mean that this flying sword belongs to Weeping Moon City? Hua Jinyu laughed and let go of the flying sword. Fellow Taoist, you're twisting words and forcing logic. Wang Shuyao said anxiously. It seems like fellow Taoist Wang is twisting words and forcing logic too. Hua Jinyu smiled. Since Weeping Moon City has no idea about the origin of this flying sword, why would there be a cultivator with such a high cultivation level like fellow Taoist Hua in charge of the auction? There wasn't a single cultivator in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm in the auction, right? Wang Shuyao rebuked without hesitation. Hua Jinyu shook his head. Fellow Taoist Wang is wrong. I'm afraid that there are 2 middle-stage Golden Core realm cultivators in this auction. Moreover, if it weren't for me, how would such a thing happen? Wouldn't the reputation and face of Weeping Moon City be trampled on? Junior sister, let's not talk about this anymore. Duan Yuming frowned slightly and cupped his hands towards Hua Jinyu. I just have 2 questions. Please speak. Firstly, I would like to ask, where did Weeping Moon City get this Green Spirit flying sword? Secondly, I would like to take back this Green Spirit flying sword. I wonder if Weeping Moon City would let it go. Hua Jinyu squinted his eyes and looked at the Green Spirit flying sword in his hand, and smiled. Whether this flying sword is the Green Spirit that you're talking about is another matter. Moreover, Weeping Moon City has always kept the origin of the flying sword a secret for other fellow Taoists. However, since this concerns the lives of two sword cultivators, I'll make the decision on behalf of the city lord of Weeping Moon City. I'll let Chang Fian explain everything to fellow Taoist Duan in detail. Thank you very much. Duan Yumming's face was filled with joy, and he cupped his hands in thanks. Senior Duan. Chang Fian smiled bitterly and said, "It's very simple. A month ago, a 10th layer Qi refining cultivator came to Weeping Moon City's auction. This cultivator's appearance was very ordinary and there was nothing special about him. Naturally, I hope Senior Duan can forgive this cultivator's appearance. I can't and I don't dare to hand it over to you. Otherwise, the reputation of Weeping Moon City that has been built for thousands of years will be ruined." Duan Yumming's face was a little gloomy. He squinted his eyes and said nothing. Chang Fian continued, "That cultivator brought this flying sword out, saying that he found it somewhere and wanted to sell it to Weeping Moon City. Of course, Weeping Moon City also knew about the disappearance of your disciples. At that time, we also asked about it. However, Senior Duan, think about it. This cultivator is only at the 10th layer Qi refining realm. He can't possibly be a match for the Foundation Establishment female sword cultivator that Senior mentioned, can he? Moreover, Weeping Moon City's auction also requires us to earn spiritual stones. There's no reason for us not to take this business that's delivered to our doorstep, right? So, Weeping Moon City took this flying sword away? Using it for the auction today?" Wang Shuyao sneered. "Yes, it's exactly as Senior Wang said." Chang Fian nodded and said sincerely, "At that time, the disciples of Weeping Moon City even advised that cultivator to sell it on consignment. That way, Weeping Moon City would only take a few spiritual stones and most of the profit would still go to that cultivator. However, the cultivator had to go on an adventure and didn't have the time to wait for a month. Therefore, the disciples of Weeping Moon City could only buy this flying sword at a high price and then bid for it here. Actually, Weeping Moon City was taking a huge risk by doing this. If no one bid for it, this flying sword would be destroyed in the hands of Weeping Moon City like the previous item that no one bid for it. Weeping Moon City is indeed benevolent and righteous." Wang Shuyao couldn't help but sneer again. "That's right. Weeping Moon City has always been a city of integrity. Fellow cultivators, you have all come to bid for it because of Weeping Moon City's integrity. If not for that, I wouldn't have dared to speak so confidently here." Chang Fian said seriously. "Forget it." Duan Yumming waved his hand and said, "I, a sword cultivator, also bid, so I understand the rules of this auction. Since fellow Taoist can't say more, then give this green spirit flying sword to my Xian sword sect. I won't pursue the negligence of your city." Hee, Senior Duan, this is an auction. Weeping Moon City used a large amount of spiritual stones to exchange for this flying sword. If you want to get this flying sword, I'm afraid you'll have to pay a certain price. Chang Fian glanced at Hua Jinyu and said in a tone that was neither arrogant nor humble, "Since this is Xian Sword Sect's flying sword, why do we still have to pay spiritual stones?" Wang Shuyao was furious. Chang Fian smiled apologetically. "It seems, Senior, you can't prove that this flying sword belongs to your sect, right? How many spiritual stones?" Duan Yumming's face was so gloomy that it looked like black water was about to drip down. "Fellow Taoists, this humble Taoist apologizes to you on behalf of my city." Chang Fian didn't directly say anything to Duan Yumming. Instead, he turned around and bowed to the crowd. He said sincerely, "This item is related to the disappearance of Huan country's sword cultivators. I have no choice but to delay everyone's bidding and sell this flying sword to the sword cultivator senior who came from afar." The crowd of cultivators applauded and praised. "Fellow cultivator Chang, your Weeping Moon City is really benevolent. Forget it, since there are sword cultivators here, we'll give them some leeway." Naturally, there were also cultivators who weren't happy. "Since it's an auction, then let's see who can offer more spiritual stones. I also want this flying sword. If the sword cultivator can't offer enough spiritual stones, I will take this flying sword." Looking coldly at Chang Fian's performance, Duan Yumming asked again in a deep voice, how many spiritual stones does this flying sword cost? Not much, not much. Chang Fian smiled and reported a number. This much? Wang Shuyao exclaimed, This is enough to bid for a treasure. That's right, the price of this flying sword is already that of a treasure. Chang Fian smiled and said, Moreover, this is the spiritual stones that my Weeping Moon City paid for the flying sword from that cultivator. I definitely didn't add a single extra spiritual stone. Then, Chang Fian glanced at Hua Jinyu and smiled. Of course, if the two seniors don't have enough spiritual stones, you can also exchange your flying swords for it. How dare you? Wang Shuyao was furious. A rainbow flew out from her side. Chapter 1704. How dare you? Without waiting for Wang Shuyao to finish her words and before the rainbow sword could reach the stage, Hua Jianyu also shouted angrily and waved his left hand. Everyone could see clearly that Hua Jinyu was holding a magic weapon that looked like a ruler in his hand. As he shook it slightly, a light ball in the shape of a crescent moon flew out from the ruler and blocked the rainbow sword. Emerald Wave Herding Moon Ruler, a cultivator below exclaimed. Let's go! Seeing the emerald light ball flying out, Duan Yuming shouted and the fishes around him flew out. Duan Yuming's figure gradually became blurry and he followed the fishes out of the auction. I'd like to see which cultivator dares to compete with this flying sword. When Wang Shuyao saw her senior apprentice brother leave, she clenched her teeth and also activated her sword art. The rainbow immediately changed direction and followed the fish. She also entered her flying sword and charged toward one of the small doors. While she was in the air, she said hatefully, What a pity! Pa-pa-pa sounds were heard. How could the restriction on the small doors withstand the impact of two golden core stage swordsmen? It had long been broken. The brilliance flickered and the two swords disappeared, leaving behind two small black doors. Hua Jinyu's crescent moon ruler flew halfway and turned back. He sneered, Sword cultivators, their attack power is indeed powerful. Unfortunately, with Ai's cultivation level, what can they do? After that, he glanced at Chang Fian and transmitted his voice to him. Then, his entire body swayed and a residual shadow flashed across the sky. He disappeared from the high platform again. Seeing the three golden core stage cultivators disappear, the crowd was in an uproar. Even Xiao Hua, who was sitting at the back, seemed to be disappointed. It seemed that he was not satisfied and everything was over. That's right. When the cultivators saw the two sword cultivators taking out their flying swords and Hua Jinyu taking out his magic weapon, the Emerald Wave Wounding Moon Ruler, they were all expecting a shocking battle that would broaden their horizons. Who knew that it would end so anticlimactically? Hua Jinyu obviously had the chance to stop the two of them from escaping, but he didn't stop them. He didn't even chase after them. Instead, he said, the attack power of sword cultivators is amazing. The attack power of sword cultivators was naturally amazing. Did Elder Hua need to repeat himself? On the high platform, Chang Fian smiled. Looks like the reputation of Weeping Moon City has spread to Huan country. Even sword cultivators came to Weeping Moon City's auction to search for clues. Of course, they're right. It's just that these sword cultivators really, they make me speechless. Since they want to participate in the auction, I will follow the rules. If you bring spiritual stones, I will give you my flying sword. Such a tough attitude, sigh, I really need to correct it. Alright, let's continue with the auction for the finale of the auction. Chang Fian clapped his hands and said, I'm sure all of you have heard the price that I mentioned just now. That's the starting price of the flying sword. If any of you like it, feel free to bid. Don't worry, Weeping Moon City will keep everyone's secret. We will definitely not let the sword cultivators know who bid for it. However, after seeing the sword cultivators' flying swords, everyone seemed to have lost interest in the flying swords. No one asked about it and no one bid for it. Even if it was Xiao Hua, he was not afraid of the sword cultivators finding him. However, when he thought about how this flying sword was related to the disappearance of Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yuhe, this green spirit flying sword obviously belonged to Zhang Yutong. Xiao Hua was not stupid enough to get involved in this mess. Moreover, the starting price of the flying sword was really high. Xiao Hua did not have that many spiritual stones. What Xiao Hua thought of, others naturally thought of as well. Chang Fian shouted a few times but no one bid. Chang Fian could only clap his hands and say, "All right, since that's the case, this flying sword will not be bidding anymore. This time's auction in Weeping Moon City ends here. Fellow Taoists who bid for the items just now, please show your number plates when you leave. Naturally, the city guards of Weeping Moon City will lead you to collect your items. Many thanks, fellow Taoists. I hope to see you again in the next auction." Immediately after, a burst of light flashed and Chang Fian's figure disappeared. However, Xiao Hua clearly saw that Chang Fian let out a long sigh. It seemed he was very lucky that the flying sword was not bid for. Who in the world kidnapped Zhang Yutong and Zhang Yuhe? I haven't seen them for several years. Why did Zhang Yutong's flying sword suddenly appear again? A 10th layer Qi refining cultivator, hee. Even I don't believe it. Can the Shenzhen sect believe it? Xiao Hua thought as he walked out of the small door. Sure enough, there were many city guards waiting outside the small door. Xiao Hua showed his number plate and a 10th layer Qi refining city guard respectfully led Xiao Hua into a room. "Fellow Taoist, please wait a moment." That city guard took Xiao Hua's number plate and left the room. Xiao Hua used his divine sense to scan the room. He knew that there were many restrictions in the room that even divine sense couldn't penetrate. He secretly praised them in his heart. Not long after, someone came in. Xiao Hua thought it was a city guard, but the person who came in was actually Chang Fian. "Io, Senior Chang." Xiao Hua quickly greeted him. He bowed and said, "How could I dare to trouble Senior?" "Don't mention it." An amiable smile appeared on Chang Fian's face. He handed over the storage pouch in his hand and said with a smile, "Since fellow Taoist Jiang is willing to help me during the auction, it's only right for me to thank you. Take a look at the things inside." Xiao Hua took it with a smile. He scanned it with his divine sense and said, "Just right. Then that's good." Chang Fian narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiao Hua. He said again, "May I know which cultivation sect fellow Taoist Jiang is from?" This. Xiao Hua was a little hesitant. "Hee, there's no need to say it. I originally thought you were from the 100 Herbs sect. Now it seems that you aren't." Chang Fian waved his hand and said with a smile, "I spoke too much. Thank you for your understanding, Senior." Xiao Hua bowed and said, "And, fellow Taoist Jiang, you said you still have 1,000-year-old first spirit grass?" Chang Fian helped Xiao Hua up and asked. Xiao Hua's heart thumped. He knew this was bad. However, he still forced a smile and said, "Yes, but whether it's 1,000-year-old herb or not, I'm not too sure." "Hee, fellow Taoist Jiang, don't worry." Chang Fian said with a smile, "I originally wanted to return the favor, but I was afraid that you didn't have anything to show me. Since you really have the first spirit grass, then it's fine." "What do you mean, Senior Chang?" Xiao Hua was a little confused. Could it be that Senior Chang can tell me about the 2 gold leaves? 2 different things, 2 different things. Chang Fian waved his hand and said with a smile, "Forgive me for not being able to tell you about the gold leaves. This is related to the rules of my Weeping Moon City. And of course, I can still tell you, these gold leaves were entrusted to me by a cultivation family in the south of Meng Kingdom. As for more, I can't tell you." Chapter 1705. A cultivator family in the south of Meng country? Xiao Hua's brows slightly wrinkled as he secretly muttered in his heart, "My Imperial Thunder Sect's ancient books have records of the Meng Empire. Not to mention the Meng Empire, even the other 2 countries have thousands of large and small cultivator families, perhaps even tens of thousands of cultivator families. It's just the south of the Meng Empire." "Senior Chang." Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said with a smile, "I think that cultivator from that cultivator family also wants the Qian Mo secret stone. When I find it, I'll definitely go back and exchange it with them. So, this cultivator might not be unwilling to let me know his identity, right?" "Ah, Chang Fian laughed and waved his hand. I don't know if that cultivator is willing or not. Maybe he wants you to know. However, rules are rules. This old man cannot disobey them. Elder Hua cannot disobey them. Even the city lord of my humble city cannot disobey them. Otherwise, how can my Weeping Moon City establish itself among the 7 great cities of the country of Xi? Xiao Hua's expression turned serious. He bowed and said, Thank you for teaching me, Senior Chang. Could Chang Fian's eyes flashed with surprise. He thought that this kid could be taught. He waved his hand and took out a stone-like jade charm. Then he handed it over and said, This old man only wanted to meet you once. But who would have thought that little friend Jiang would have Ling Yichao? Now that I look at little friend Jiang again, your aptitude is really outstanding. Hee, this old man won't ask which sect you're from. This is a small favor that I'm returning to you. Please accept it. What's this? Xiaohua didn't think that the auction was a favor, but since Chang Fian said so, he had to accept it. When he took the jade talisman, he felt that it was slightly hot. This jade talisman was different from ordinary jade talismans. It was the size of a palm, more than twice the size of ordinary jade talismans. Do you know about the auction in my Weeping Moon City? Seeing Chang Fian's smiling eyes flashing with a hint of pride, Xiaohua shook his head and said, Forgive me for being short-sighted. I don't know about this auction. Ha, you don't have to feel ashamed. Chang Fian laughed and said, If you're not at the late stage of foundation establishment, you won't know about this auction. If you really know about it, how can this favor be counted as a favor? This. Xiaohua understood and looked at the jade talisman in his hand. This jade talisman is the proof of participation in the secret auction. Chang Fian pointed with his hand and said, Although I'm not in the late stage of foundation establishment, I can use my status as the lord of the auction to obtain this certificate. It's just that this old man has something to attend to in 10 days, so I won't be able to participate. It just so happens that little friend Jiang gave this old man some face during today's auction, so this old man will give this opportunity to little friend Jiang. Xiaohua panicked and said in a low voice, Senior Chang, the people participating in the secret auction meeting are all late-stage foundation building cultivators, core formation seniors. Junior is only in the aura refining realm. I'm afraid it won't be good for me to go, right? It doesn't matter. Who would know that you're in the chi refining stage? Don't worry and go. If you don't say anything and this old man doesn't say anything, who will know? Chang Fian patted Xiaohua's shoulder and said with a mysterious smile, Also, maybe there's an extremely good opportunity inside that will help you advance to the 12th layer of chi refining. In this secret auction meeting, things that you can't even imagine will often appear. Hearing this, Xiaohua's heart was slightly moved. That's right, core formation cultivators and foundation establishment cultivators were specially participating in this secret auction. Although Chang Fian didn't mention nascent soul cultivators, it was obvious that since others couldn't see through his cultivation, then other people's cultivation might also be in the nascent soul stage. How bad could the things that these almighty people used to exchange be? Fortunately, he had this 1,000-year-old Ling One grass. Otherwise, Chang Fian might not be able to give this jade talisman to him. If that's the case, then this junior won't be unreasonable. Many thanks for Senior Chang's kindness. Xiaohua immediately cupped his hands in thanks and put away the jade talisman. Chang Fian nodded and said with a smile, I hope that your sect will participate in my Weeping Moon City's auctions more in the future. Next time, this old man will prepare more spiritual herbs. I hope that your sect will support me more. Xiaohua secretly laughed and cupped his hands. This junior will definitely tell my sect's master that this junior will take his leave. After watching Xiaohua leave the small house, Chang Fian's expression changed and he hurriedly left. Xiaohua's jade talisman to participate in the secret auction was just a small matter. What he needed to worry about was the matter of the flying sword. The Weeping Moon City's good plan was to sell the flying sword and make a profit. As for whether or not the flying sword belonged to the 2 missing sword cultivators, how would they know? Even if it was true, after the auction was over, the Weeping Moon City would be able to push all the blame away. Who would have thought that it would be a coincidence that Duan Yuming and Wang Shuyao actually appeared in the auction? This flying sword really did belong to Zhang Yutong. If that was the case, then the matter would be troublesome. Chang Fian had no choice but to hurry out of the city to take care of the matter. He wanted to see if he could find the cultivator who sold the flying sword. Naturally, whether or not he could find him was unknown. The key was that he had to go to the Weeping Moon City to find him. Xiaohua came out of the auction building and returned to his original appearance. He originally thought that Sun Shu and the others were waiting anxiously outside. But when he came out to take a look, he actually guessed half of it right. Although they were anxious, the only people waiting were Sun Shu and Qian Diheng. Kun Fian was not outside. "Io, junior brother Xiao, why did you only come out now?" As soon as Qian Diheng saw Xiaohua, he shouted, "You only bid for some things, why are you so slow? Other people have already come out." "Hee, this little brother bid for a good thing. Senior Chang personally came to see us and invited us to participate in the auction next time. This little brother will now explain to senior brother Qian that whether or not we will come next time will be decided by senior brother and senior sister." Xiaohua immediately told Qian Diheng about his promise to Chang Fian. Qian Diheng was very happy. He patted his shoulder and said, "If you bid for the flying sword at the end, senior Chang will meet you. This brother will also believe it. But there are many things at the beginning. Even if you bid for the expensive ones, you won't be able to bid for them. Believe it or not, it's up to you." Xiaohua touched his nose and smiled. Then he looked left and right and said curiously, "This little brother came out late. Why is senior sister Kuan even later than this little brother? I'm afraid that the last few magic tools were all won by senior sister Kuan." Qian Diheng looked at the sky with slanted eyes. The sky was pitch black and there were countless brilliant stars. He had a thoughtful expression on his face. After a while, he nodded deeply, eyes observation of the sky at night. "I'm afraid that's the case." "Huh." Sun Shu at the side couldn't bear it anymore. He held his stomach and bent over, saying, "Junior brother Qian? I never thought that junior brother would be as interesting as junior brother Xiao. One is marked by the company one keeps. There's no other way." Qian Diheng spread his hands. This action seemed to be something Xiaohua had done before. "And yes, there's no other way." This time, Xiaohua didn't touch his nose. Instead, he rubbed his nose very helplessly. With great difficulty, Sun Shu held back his laughter. With a crimson face, he looked at the entrance of the auction and said with a smile, "You still need to observe the sky at night? Senior sister Kuan is a disciple of the Heavenly Thunder Palace. It's only natural that she has some spirit stones in her storage bag. The magic tools in this auction are also pleasing to the eye. Winning one doesn't count for much. AI, this young master is still a poor boy." Xiaohua heard this and cried out in his heart. Thinking about the price of the last few magic tools, he sweated profusely. Since Sun Shu said so, needless to say, Qian Diheng also had a lot of spirit stones in his storage bag. No wonder this guy wants to go to that mysterious place to refine magic tools. Xiaohua thought to himself. In the time it took to smoke half a cigarette, Kun Fian finally came out. Beside her was a middle-aged cultivator at the 11th level of qi refining. However, that cultivator didn't walk towards Xiaohua and the others. Instead, he cupped his hands and bid farewell to Kun Fian. While he was at it, he glanced at Xiaohua and the others before turning around and hurrying in another direction. Qian Diheng was obviously not as close to Kun Fian as he was to Xiaohua. Looking at the back of that middle-aged cultivator, he asked with a strange voice, "Senior sister Kuan is in a good mood. I waited outside for senior sister and drank a lot of cold wind." Senior sister is actually chatting with a fellow cultivator you know in the auction. Kun Fian glared at Qian Diheng. Looking around, she said in a low voice, "This fellow cultivator is also someone I met occasionally when I was traveling in the past. I don't really know him well. However, just now, I got some things in the auction and bumped into him when I came out." "You just bumped into him for such a long time?" Qian Diheng curled his lips. "And I said something, so I was delayed." Kun Fian seemed to be thinking about the matter just now and was too lazy to care about Qian Diheng's attitude. Sun Shu and the others looked at each other, their eyes filled with curiosity. Let's talk about it when we get back. Kun Fian seemed to have made a decision. She waved her hand and said, "This matter is very secretive and cannot be leaked." When they returned to the inn, the four people activated the restriction formation in the room. Only then did Kun Fian tell the whole story. It turned out that this middle-aged qi refining cultivator was called Changlan. He was a disciple of a cultivation family. Kun Fian had met him a few years ago when she went out with her senior sister to gain experience. They were looking for spiritual herbs together. He could be considered a reliable person. Today, he happened to meet Kun Fian in the auction and invited her to Jianghu City to participate in a small e-fair. He also said that this e-fair would be attended by seniors of the Foundation establishment realm. At that time, there might be a condensed treasure. Condensed treasure? Xiao Hua was stunned. First, he thought of the jade slip that Zhen Qin gave him that recorded the understanding of breaking through the Foundation establishment realm. Then, he thought of the ancient books that he saw in the 8 great thunder palaces of the Imperial Thunder sect. He couldn't help but think to himself, such a precious thing can be exchanged? Alas, but that's not right. Xiao Hua thought of another layer. Qian Diheng and Sun Shu, who were at the side, were similarly stunned. Soon after, they were wild with joy, causing Xiao Hua to be baffled. Go, why not? Just for the condensed treasure, it's worth going. Qian Diheng agreed. And that Jianghu City is close to the route that we planned to take previously. It won't be too far away. Sun Shu seconded. This, Xiao Hua said in a low voice, the condensed treasure is such a precious treasure. How could it appear in a small e-fair in Jianghu City? Chapter 1706. He, junior brother Zhao's words are wrong. Qian Diheng said with a smile. I believe that Martial Uncle Helpless has already told junior brother Xiao about the condensed knowledge treasure? Xiao Hua shook his head and said, Master didn't say anything. He knew that junior brother was a loose cultivator and that it wasn't easy to reach Foundation establishment. He was also afraid that junior brother would be distracted, so he never mentioned the condensed knowledge treasure. But junior brother's big senior brother mentioned it when junior brother was chatting with junior brother. Then it should be so, Kun Fian said with a smile. Senior Xiang must have also thought about the condensed knowledge treasure before. But this condensed knowledge treasure is too rare. If Senior Xiang had such good fortune, I'm afraid that he wouldn't need to spend 50 years to reach Foundation establishment. Junior brother always felt that this was just a legend. The condensed knowledge treasure is condensed by Foundation establishment and even Aurus core stage cultivators using a special secret technique before they reach the end of their lifespan. Let's not talk about the success rate of this secret technique being extremely low, not even 1 out of 10,000 is left. Let's talk about the aftereffects of using this secret technique. Who would dare to blindly try it? Xiao Hua shook his head disapprovingly. What aftereffects? It's nothing more than becoming a mortal who has lost both his mind and cultivation, waiting for the end of his lifespan. Kun Fian said unconvinced. But if this condensed knowledge treasure is found by Senior's reincarnation again, he can immediately comprehend the comprehension within the condensed knowledge treasure. Although his cultivation may not be able to recover in the blink of an eye, but the realm of his Tao heart will immediately return to the realm he was in when he was alive. Xiao Hua was even more disdainful. Let's not talk about the condensed knowledge treasure's secret technique that every cultivator has a special soul imprint. Even the talk of reincarnation, I'm afraid there's no basis for it, but just as Xiao Hua said this, Xiao Hua's mind suddenly lit up like a bolt of lightning flashing. Condensed knowledge treasure. However, if a reincarnated cultivator finds the condensed knowledge treasure that he left behind in his previous life, the realm of his Tao heart will immediately recover. He only needs to accumulate his cultivation. The various realms that he cultivated in his previous life would not encounter any bottlenecks. All realms would be like a flat land. I have cultivated till today, I have never encountered any bottlenecks. Could it be that I am also the reincarnation of a cultivator? A bone-chilling feeling arose spontaneously. Even if that's not the case, since I won't encounter any bottlenecks in my cultivation, then the matter of the condensing treasure is most likely true. Xiaohua immediately felt that his smile, when he saw the matter of the condensing treasure, was really superficial. Seeing Xiaohua's face suddenly change, Sun Shu asked in concern, "Junior brother Xiao, what's wrong?" Junior brother Xiao must have thought of something and felt that he had no reason to refute it, right? Qian Diheng smiled and said to Xiaohua, "Junior brother Xiao joined my Imperial Thunder sect halfway, so I'm afraid you don't know some of the sect's secrets." Then, she glanced at Sun Shu and said mysteriously, "I presume senior sister Sun has something to say?" "Yes, the matter of the condensed treasure is indeed true." Sun Shu's face froze and nodded. "Since we came out together with junior brother Xiao, there are some things that can be said. Let's be frank and honest. Junior brother Xiao, 2,000 years ago, there was a senior in my Imperial Thunder sect. I don't dare to mention his name, because his nascent soul was not formed. He destroyed his own golden core and luckily used a secret technique to refine the condensing treasure. And, dozens of years later, this senior once again coincidentally entered my Imperial Thunder sect as a loose cultivator and obtained the condensing treasure that he refined himself. Now, he is already a demigod existence." Hiss, Xiaohua took a deep breath and looked at Sun Shu with an inconceivable expression. He muttered, There really is such a thing. All of this, isn't it too much of a coincidence?" "That's right, how is it just a coincidence? This is simply heaven's will." Kun Fei Yan's face was full of longing. This senior was a female in his previous life, but in this life, he became a male. Not to mention entering my Imperial Thunder sect, he even obtained the condensing treasure hidden in my Imperial Thunder sect. If this isn't heaven's will, then what is? Yes, it's simply inconceivable. Sun Shu looked at Xiaohua with a pair of beautiful eyes. Talking about the previous life, talking about reincarnation, naturally, it's also true. This senior recalled the events of his previous life? Xiaohua's heart thumped as he asked anxiously. A trace of affection flashed across Sun Shu's eyes as she said with a smile, "How is that possible? The condensing treasure is merely the comprehension of cultivation. How can the memories of the previous life be left behind? Sigh, if one could know the events of the previous life, wouldn't this world be in chaos? Previous life, present life, and future life. These three lives are the world's most mysterious Tao of life and death. That condensing treasure can't even condense a trace of heavenly Tao, so how can it leave behind memories?" Qian Diheng said in a low voice. "Tao of life and death? Heavenly Tao?" Xiaohua was slightly shocked. His eyes swiveled and he cupped his hands, saying, "Senior brother Qian, truly wise. This little brother has never heard of these before. I'm just making things up, Qian Diheng said with a mischievous smile. "This is all from when the Heavenly Thunder Palace's Grand Master was chatting. This little brother eavesdropped. This little brother is ridiculing himself. Senior brother Qian, you know that this little brother is a loose cultivator and have never heard of this kind of thing before. Yet you still bring it out to entice this little brother?" Xiaohua said with a smile that was not a smile. "All right, this little brother also doesn't understand. Don't laugh at me." Qian Diheng looked at Sun Shu and Kun Fei Yan and said, "It is said that this world has 3,000 great Taos. The leading great Tao is the Tao of life and death. Next is the Tao of karma. After that is yin-yang, samsara, stars, 5 elements, 8 trigrams, and so on. The power of these great Taos are different, but as long as one can cultivate one can cultivate to become an immortal, become a god, and enjoy eternal happiness and longevity." Qian Diheng's eloquence was extremely good. When he first started speaking, Xiaohua's mouth and tongue were dry and his mind was filled with fascination. But as he listened, Xiaohua felt that something was wrong. Qian Diheng was going further and further away. similar to the storytellers of the secular world. Cough. Senior brother Qian. Xiaohua could not help but interrupt the talkative Qian Diheng. Why is the great Tao 3,000 and not 5,000? Or is it 3,001? Don't disturb me, Qian Diheng said impatiently. 3,000 great Taos is a collective name. It will eventually become the heavenly Tao, but there are many ways to describe it. No. Kun Fei Yen shouted. Earth Thunder Palace's ancestors said that this world has 3,000 great Taos, not one more, not one less. Or else why would there be the saying, weak water 3,000, only one scoop? In this world, there are only 3,000 people who can become saints and ancestors. How is that possible? Qian Diheng snorted and said, then according to Earth Thunder Palace's ancestor, there are only 3,000 people who can become immortals? Even if they become gods, there are only 3,000? Kun Fei Yen was speechless. He only shouted, that's what ancestor said. Why don't you talk about the great Taos outside the 3,000 great Taos? I can't even explain the 3,000 great Taos clearly. How do I know what's outside the 3,000 great Taos? Qian Diheng waved his hand and said, Chapter 1707. Seeing Qian Diheng and Kun Fian quarreling, Xiaohua secretly laughed and said enviously, having a background is really good. I just heard about this condensed knowledge treasure. Who knew that they already knew about the 3,000 great Taos? Can't compare. When the two of them shut up, Xiaohua smiled and said, little brother still has a question. I wonder if senior brother Qian or senior sister Kun can solve it? Find senior sister Sun. The two of them said at the same time. Senior sister Sun, little brother believes that there is a condensed knowledge treasure, but if a condensed knowledge treasure refined by a spirit-severing stage senior is found by his descendant, wouldn't he suddenly reach the spirit-severing stage? Xiaohua asked. Sun Shu smiled and said, didn't junior brother Qian just say? A condensed knowledge treasure can't condense a trace of the heavenly Tao. Our qi refinement, foundation establishment and nascent soul all have to give birth to the child of the heavenly Tao, nascent soul. This nascent soul is the crystallization of heaven and earth's spiritual qi, and nascent soul contains the heavenly Tao. Starting from the nascent soul stage, all comprehension would contain a trace of the heavenly Tao. Thus, it was impossible to refine the heavenly Tao into the condensed knowledge treasure. Therefore, there is no condensed knowledge treasure refined by a spirit-severing stage senior. Oh, so it's like this. Xiaohua nodded and had a trace of understanding. Then, what is the condensed knowledge treasure refined from? I don't know about this. Qian Diheng smiled and said, I am still young and have never thought about it. And, it is said that the materials required are extremely rare, even my Imperial Thunder sect. I'm afraid we don't have it. Seeing that the three of them had some hope and enthusiasm in their eyes, Xiaohua suddenly realized and pointed at the three of them, saying, could it be, you all think that this condensed knowledge treasure was left behind by you in your previous life? What do you think? Qian Diheng and the other two said in unison, maybe it was left behind by you in your previous life. Xiaohua smiled bitterly, I understand. If anyone knows about this thing, they will definitely try their luck. Even if it isn't, what's wrong with it? Yes, what if it is? Kun Fian smiled and said, that would be great. But the fellow Taoist that senior sister Kun knows is merely a disciple of a cultivator clan. Is this news reliable? Sun Shu was somewhat doubtful. Who cares? Qian Diheng said disdainfully, love isn't it? Since we have to go there anyway, we'll just take a small detour to take a look. Even if he didn't, it would be good to exchange for something else. Alas, I didn't get any benefits from today's auction. That flying sword might really be Zhang Yutong's. My goodness, it looks really tempting. When will the meeting be held? Should we hurry over now? Sun Shu urged. Kun Fian smiled. 2 months later, there is no rush. If we use the teleportation array in Weeping Moon City, we should be able to arrive there in half a month. As soon as Qian Diheng heard this, He hurriedly winked at Xiao Hua and said anxiously, "Don't worry. And indeed, don't worry. All of you have obtained good things, but this little brother is still empty-handed. These few days, this little brother will walk around the Chiyu city and see if I can find anything." That's true. There are still 2 months left. Let's wait a few days before we leave. Xiao Hua also agreed. You too. Sun Shu and Kun Fian looked at the two of them strangely and then smiled. Is there something fishy? No. Xiao Hua and Qian Diheng shook their heads firmly at the same time. Between cultivators, there were naturally secrets. Sun Shu and Kun Fian also knew about it. Only because the 4 of them were traveling together and were fellow disciples of the same sect, they asked a little. Seeing the 2 of them deny it, the other 2 naturally wouldn't say anything more. When Xiao Hua was in Luan's shop, he had the opportunity to ask about the location of the weapon refiner, but because of his identity, he was afraid of arousing Luan Qing or Luan Han's suspicion, so he didn't ask. At this time, he could only wait for Qian Diheng's arrangement. Moreover, when he came back last night, Xiao Hua had already thought of the mistake in his whereabouts. When the 4 of them decided to stay, he suggested to find another inn. Qian Diheng and the others naturally didn't have any objections. The next day, the 4 of them changed to another inn that was far away. After entering their respective rooms, Qian Diheng quietly went out. Sun Shu and Kun Fian acted as if they didn't know. The 2 of them agreed to go out, presumably to buy yellow talismans, pills and other things, but Xiao Hua declined and stayed in the room alone. First, he took out the talisman that Chang Fian gave him and carefully looked at it. The talisman was very simple. It was a place, a time, and a sentence. There were no other words. Should I go or not? Xiao Hua was a little hesitant. To be honest, facing senior cultivators who could kill him with a raise of their hand, Xiao Hua's heart was really nervous. That feeling of no safety made him feel uncomfortable. Forget it, I'd better not go. Xiao Hua clapped his hand and stored it into the space, thinking, the things that Foundation Establishment and Golden Core cultivators want to secretly exchange, if not magic weapons, then it's top-quality pills. It's definitely not something that I can use now. Why should I go? If I encounter something that I like, I don't have enough spirit stones to exchange. Just look at that flying sword. If I don't take out thousands of years old, 10,000 years old spirit grass, I definitely can't exchange it. And these are all things that make others envious. I'm just Qi refining stage 12, even if I can kill Foundation Establishment initial stage cultivators, but in the eyes of old monsters who have cultivated for hundreds of years, I'm just a baby. Don't show off your wealth. I'd better wait until my cultivation is higher. Soon after, Xiao Hua took out Luan Qing's jade slip and immersed his divine sense into it, slowly comprehending the Luan family's so-called ascending flame of fire art. This ascending flame of fire art was also strange. It was completely different from the fire art of the Samadhi True Fire. The fire art of the Samadhi True Fire taught about how to create the Samadhi True Fire, while the ascending flame of fire art taught about how to cultivate the ascending flame of fire. Naturally, this frost flame technique used the essence of a cultivator to cultivate it, and it was related to the cultivator's physique. Different cultivators of the 5 elements would cultivate different frost flame technique. But what cultivated frost flame technique was the fire seed of frost flame technique. That is, the fire seed that Luan Qing divided from her frost flame technique. Xiao Hua comprehended for a long time, his brows tightly knitted. He opened his mouth, and a bit of frost flame technique flew out of his body, lightly floating in front of him. This frost flame technique admittedly has all 5 elements, but clearly, the speed at which it swallows wood attribute spiritual energy is much faster than other spiritual energy. This Luan Qing should have a wood attribute physique. This young master's physique is hidden fire. Using this fire seed to cultivate it is a lot worse. Moreover, this young master used Luan Qing's fire seed to cultivate it. This frost flame technique can be considered as the reproduction of Luan Qing's frost flame technique. In essence, it carries the mark of the Luan family. If this frost flame technique is purely used to refine magic tools, it can be used to attack, but it has a huge drawback. If someone else obtains the Luan family's fire seed that is several generations older than Luan Qing, this young master's frost flame technique will be innately shorter than that person. This young master will be inviting trouble to himself. It's really inappropriate, really inappropriate. Xiaohua hesitated again, because his previous idea was only to use this frost flame technique to refine tools. But after seeing the fire art and Luan Qing's obscure introduction, he knew that refining tools was only the use of the frost flame technique after its decline. He already had other ideas in his heart, and didn't want to simply use this inferior fire seed to cultivate the frost flame technique. Moreover, listening to Luan Qing's tone, although this frost flame technique is a heavenly fire seed, its power will decrease with each generation. He didn't know how many generations this frost flame technique has been passed down. Even if it was successfully cultivated, he feared that it would have long lost the reputation of being a heavenly fire seed. It also couldn't be used to refine strange materials like the Great Wisdom Sword, so why would he go through the trouble of cultivating it? Damn it, after thinking about it, this young master seems to have suffered a loss. Xiaohua bitterly smiled, and put away the jade slip and fire seed. He thought to himself, unless I find a pure frost flame technique, the Samadhi True Fire's fire art and mother-child spirit fruit can be considered to have benefited Luan Qing for nothing. However, where could he get the pure Ling Yuzhu fire seed? Even the Luan family didn't have it, so where could he find it in this vast Xiaoyu continent? I'd better obediently stick to my old profession first. Xiaohua patted his head, and his mind entered the space. As he urged the puppet to open up a new medicinal field, preparing to plant the more than 400 bell spirit herbs he had just won from the auction, he looked at Little Yellow and Little Silver. These two little things were sleeping soundly, especially Little Silver, who was no longer as quick-witted as before. He was lying in a pile of spirit herbs, and there seemed to be a half-eaten spirit fruit in his little mouth. His little tail swayed slightly in the spirit herbs from time to time, and his little eyes were closed very tightly. His little eyelids were still twitching slightly from time to time, as if he had sensed Xiaohua's state of mind. He opened his eyes a little bit to sweep them over, and then closed them tightly again. The golden lines on Little Silver's nose seemed to have deepened a lot, and they're actually a little curved, as if they're going to become runes. Xiaohua was a little surprised. Also, Little Silver's body is even more pure white, and there are clearly some golden threads on his body. Shortly after, Xiaohua looked at Little Yellow. There wasn't any special change in Little Yellow, but it felt like it was growing again. These two little things can grow even when they're sleeping. I'm really envious. Xiaohua sighed with emotion as he looked at the divine power centipede not far away from Little Silver. After several years of recuperation, this thing had already recovered from its injuries. It was just that, this thing was also sleeping soundly and quietly. Furthermore, it seemed to be extremely afraid of Little Silver, and kept quite a distance from him. Looking at the black brilliance on the divine power centipede's back, which also had a faint golden light, Xiaohua understood. Could it be that this young master's space? Can all demon beasts evolve? But time clearly passes slower in this space than outside. Look at the water pattern butterfly egg, it's been so many years, but it still hasn't hatched. And there's also the ice worm king egg, the damaged part hasn't been repaired yet. Xiaohua changed his mind and thought, forget about these things that haven't hatched yet. However, this godly power centipede will most likely be of great use in the future. This young master still needs to find a spirit storage pouch and place this thing inside to raise properly. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.